Good morning, everybody. It's my sincere pleasure to invite everybody in person and online to the BCIRPU 25th Anniversary Symposium. I would like to extend a sincere thank you to both Mr. Jonathan Robinson and Ms. Andrea Godfreyson and the BC Ministry of Health to make this event possible. Before we start, I would like to acknowledge and give thanks to the Coast Salish people, the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh, on whose lands we live, work, and play. My name is Shalina Baboul, and I'm the Associate Director with the BC Injury Research and Prevention Unit. I've been with the unit for 25 years now.
Since get it any bigger than that, so just leave it.
Oh. Since shortly after the doors opened for the injury unit. And I have to say, I wasn't actually hired with the injury unit. I was hired to work in Tim Oberlander and Ruth Gruno's lab, measuring C. elegans worms. So I sat there for 8 hours watching these worms on a monitor. Sorry, Tim and Ruth, if you're online. Watching them move a millimeter back and forth and measuring the time and distance it moved. And after 1 week, I was like, I cannot do this any longer. And Tim's lab and the injury unit were on the same floor, doors apart. So I walked over to Parminder Reina's office, who you'll hear from shortly. And I said, do you have anything available for me to work on? Can you hire me, please? And here we are 25 years later. I was just reflecting with some other staff from the beginning how old I feel being here, because not only am I here for the 25th BCIRPU Symposium, I got a notification from UBC saying, please attend a dinner for your 25 years working at UBC. And I thought, oh gosh. I have to say, it's been an honor and a pleasure to be able to work at BCIRPU throughout the years, and in particular, to work with each and every staff member. I'm very fortunate to be in the company of such amazing, dedicated, and driven staff members, and recognize and appreciate that we would never have been able to accomplish as much as we have without them. So thank you. Today's symposium is intended to celebrate 25 years of BCIRPU, and we have invited speakers who are past collaborators. And today they will provide highlights on past partnerships and collaborations with the unit throughout the 25 years. So in terms of the program today, we will start with the traditional Indigenous welcome. We'll have opening remarks from the BC Ministry of Health and the BC Centers for Disease Control. And what we've done is we've invited speakers through 5-year chunks throughout our time. So we have speakers for each of those years talking about the work that they did with the unit. Finally, we'll have a closing with future directions and a closing message by individuals from the BC Children's Hospital Research Institute, Dr. Quindone, and Department of Pediatrics, Dr. Stephen Miller. Before we proceed, I'd like to provide some housekeeping items. Paid parking is in effect 24 hours a day, and the meters accept change and credit cards only. You probably have already parked. Food or drinks are not allowed in the Chan Auditorium. If you would like to grab a bite or have a morning coffee, please use room 2108 across the atrium, which is just across back there. Bathrooms are located just outside the atrium. Men's bathrooms to your left towards Being Around the World, and the women's is straight across the Chan Auditorium, just behind where the breakfast was being served. If you need to leave for any reason, please use the back exit up the stairs behind you and to your left, so as to not disrupt the presentations. We are recording today, and it will be made available after the event. To aid us in recording, please ensure the microphone in front of you is turned off. To do so, the round button should not be red. If it is red, press it once and it will turn off. Please also note that we encourage you to use social media for the event. In the bottom right corner of the slides, you will see the BCIRPU handle and hashtag BCIRPU25. And I believe Johnston Wang, our communications coordinator, has kicked it off for this morning. Now, I would like to welcome Coast Salish Elder Roberta Price to join me on the stage to start us off this morning. For over 30 years, Elder Roberta Price has actively shared her leadership, wisdom, and teachings at UBC and throughout the Lower Mainland to assist both Indigenous and non-Indigenous community members to achieve improved outcomes in healthcare. A member of the Coast Salish Nanaimo Cowichan Nations, she has been instrumental in helping to create shared spaces for both Indigenous and Western approaches to healing and health. Her ongoing involvement and leadership in research projects have been key to the continued work of decolonizing healthcare and creating cultural safety and equity for Indigenous patients. Again, we are very fortunate to have Elder Price with us today, and I would like to pass this time on to her.
We'll see. Thank you so much. Well, we hope everyone has safe travels that may be still stuck in that traffic I was stuck in on the way here. So sometimes we need a little step stool here so I can see over the computers. We'll see. I'll start us off in a good and respectful way, everyone. Haichka, Siyam, Siaya. Greetings and welcome, everyone. As Coast Salish matriarch and elder, I wish to give a very warm thank you to all my relatives on the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh for welcoming me to live in the unceded lands of my relatives, Musqueam and Richmond, going on 43 years now. As Coast Salish matriarch and elder, I wish to give each and every one a very warm welcome who live, work, and play, give and receive service, teach and learn, celebrate this 25th anniversary on our unceded, ancestral, and occupied lands of my relatives, Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh. Always holding my hands up in honor and thanks to my beautiful mentor teaching elders, Elder Vince Stogan from Musqueam, Elder Bob George from Tsleil-Waututh, to always follow in their mentoring teachings, their mentoring footsteps, to always share a blessing and a prayer whenever we come together. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to the teachings of our ancestors. Now, I'd like to call each of you out of your comfort zone, both present here in the auditorium and those who may be on Zoom, to take a stand up with Elder Roberta as I share the blessing and the prayer for this beautiful celebration here today. Haichka, thank you for listening and respecting. Haichka, Osiam. We give you many, many thanks, Creator, for bringing us all together here in person and virtually in such a warm and respectful way. We ask, Creator, that you bless the ones who are away due to illness or other obligations. Bless the ones who will join us, help them to join safely. And we call upon you, Creator, to bring your blessings down upon our minds, our hearts, our bodies, our spirits. So when we think our thoughts, they are good, positive, and respectful. When we speak our words, they are good, positive, and respectful. And we call upon you, Creator, to bless the people who prepare the food and drink. Bless the food and drink we put in to nourish our bodies on our journeys to wellness and strength. We give you kind thanks each and every day, Creator, for the special blessings of protection you bring down upon all the beautiful people who are working so very hard in so many ways, in so many places. During this pandemic, for all illnesses, for the safe delivery of our grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and especially for the ongoing opioid crisis. Continue to bless and protect them and their families, Creator. And we kindly and respectfully ask you, Creator, to bring very, very special blessings of protection and healing down upon all our beautiful relatives right across Turtle Island, who have reopened wounds and are grieving all over again over the ongoing daily media releases, especially blessing our relatives in the Stalu territory in the news of late. We kindly and respectfully ask you, Creator, to bring very, very special blessings of protection and healing down upon our beautiful, beautiful Mother Earth and all the wounds put upon Mother Earth, all the effects of those wounds put upon Mother Earth, bringing the extreme rain, wind, wildfires, hurricanes, earthquakes that have affected many, many families and communities throughout the world. We ask for special blessings of protection and healing down upon all the beautiful families who are experiencing the effects of those wounds upon Mother Earth. We ask for special blessings of protection and healing down upon our beautiful Mother Earth. And we kindly and respectfully ask you, Creator, to bring very, very special blessings of protection and healing down upon all the beautiful families and communities that are affected by oppression and war in many, many parts of the world as we meet here today. Bless and protect those families into health and healing, Creator. And we kindly and respectfully ask you, Creator, to wrap each and every one of us here and all of our loved ones in the warmest blanket of protection as we all continue on this part of the journey of our lives. Help us each to keep safe in our travels, both near and far, Creator. And we always give you many, many thanks, Creator, as we ask you to bring all of your blessings down upon all the ones that are hurting, all the ones that are grieving, all the ones that are hungry, all the ones without homes, and especially, Creator, all the ones that are hurting, all the ones that are grieving. Haichka, Haichka, Osiam, Osiam. Thank you so much, everyone. Sit down now. Osiam.
Thank you, Elder Price, for your wise words and good wishes in our meeting today. Please accept this as a token of appreciation. There we go. The BC Ministry of Health was a leader in Canada in 1997 in making an investment in injury prevention and has supported BCIRPU with vital core funding since it opens its doors in 1998. Since then, they have been extremely supportive partners in the work of BCIRPU, focused on improvements in policy and practice that make a positive difference in the lives of British Columbians and Canadians more broadly. Recently, the ministry released the Injury Prevention Strategic Policy Framework, highlighting 3 priorities for injury prevention and the agenda for our work in the coming years. These include the prevention of falls and fall-related injury prevention amongst community-dwelling seniors, transport-related injury prevention, and the prevention of youth suicide and self-harm. Leading the current investment in injury prevention is Mr. Jonathan Robinson, Executive Director, Healthy Living and Health Promotion Branch with the Population and Public Health Division of the Ministry of Health. Jonathan Robinson is the Executive Director of the Prevention and Health Promotion Branch within the Population and Public Health Division of BC's Ministry of Health. Jonathan provides leadership for coordinated health promotion and prevention efforts that reduce the incidence of chronic disease and injuries and promotes optimal health and wellness by developing awareness, motivation, and the conditions that support people to make healthy lifestyle choices. Jonathan brings over 20 years of experience in government program and project delivery, offering exceptional skills in stakeholder relations, strategic policy development execution, portfolio project management, and business change management. It is my pleasure to invite Jonathan to share how and why the BC Ministry of Health sees value in investments in injury prevention. Jonathan, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure that I'll be able to have the emotional impact of Elder Price. Thank you very much for that opening. I'd also like to recognize that I come from Victoria and live, work, and play on the traditional and unceded territories of the Algonquin peoples and the Esquimalt and Songhees First Nations. Every day I wake up, feel privileged that I am able to honor the care and feeding of the lands that I live on and work on today. So what a pleasure it is to be here today as we gather to celebrate this remarkable milestone, the BC Injury and Research Prevention Unit's 25th anniversary. So I'm just going to say, let's give a little hand. 25 years, it's pretty amazing. You know, as I reflected, I the way I see it, this symposium marks a quarter century of dedication, innovation, and unwavering commitment to the health and safety of the people of BC. I think if any one of us reflected over the last 25 years, we could not but recognize the significant impact that the BCIRPU has had on the health landscape in this province. From its inception, the BCIRPU has been at the forefront of injury prevention, consistently pushing boundaries, contributing to research, awareness, educating, and collaborating with diverse stakeholders to make our communities and the people that live, work, and play there safer. So, in my role representing government and, by way of that, the people of BC, I'd like to offer a thank you right now for those 25 years of dedication to the people of BC. So on behalf of the people of BC, thank you, BCIRPU. So what is it we're grappling with in this province? I'll try to set a little bit of the context around what we're dealing with here. As we all know, injuries can occur across the full life course in virtually every setting. Injuries are there's inequitable. Certain groups such as young children and young people, our older adults, those at the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum, our Indigenous peoples, those living in rural, remote communities, all inequity harmed by injury. But we also know most injuries are predictable and 90% preventable, I'd say, with evidence-based interventions. But despite this, unintentional, intentional injuries remain one of the leading causes of disability, hospitalizations, and avoidable mortality in the province. And the cost of injury is significant at the individual level, the family, communities, and society in general. I'm just going to go through some data here. For the age category 1 to 44, injuries is the leading cause of death and fourth amongst all ages. In that ages 1 to 44 category, injuries account for approximately 30% of potential life years lost. And if you think about this, a staggering 70% of preventable life years lost. In 2018, sort of a little bit data, so you can do the math a little bit, 5 years, just under 3,000 deaths. And think of that in comparison to our declared public health emergencies in the annual total of that. Not to diminish those, but just for context. Just under 9,000 disabilities in 1 year, over 33,000 hospitalizations, over 60,000 emergency department visits, costing BC a total of $4.7 billion, of which $2.7 billion is direct healthcare costs. And remember, that's 90% largely preventable. And if you think about that, take that $2.7 billion, that equates to about, let me get this right, $7.4 million a day in largely preventable costs to our health system. In 2018, as the leading causes of injury were falls at about 1.7 billion, around 40% of that total burden is falls. Unintentional poisoning around 800 million in 2018. Now that's where the toxic drug crisis shows up. So, I can expect 5 years later, that's going to be significantly higher. Around, saying that's about 16.3%. Transport related industries right at about $500 million, 11%. Child and youth suicide and self-harm at just under 400 million, around 8-9%. And then we have the injuries from sport and recreation related as well, coming in at around 20 million. So a significant challenge that we face here. And anyone that works in this space knows, whether you're in this room today, whether you're in BC or Canada, and likely globally, you will have been supported in some way, probably by BCIRPU. And so it probably comes as no surprise that all of those data and everything that I'm just sharing right now that inform my work of our teams and many of us here, all coming from the BCIRPU. And if you're interested specifically, the cost of injury in BC report, community against preventable injuries report, and of course, their IDOT tool. So I've been in my role for about 5 years now, just over 5 years. So I joined when this organization was relatively mature. So I'm not going to delve too much into the past here. I hope that there's other, I think we've got 5 speakers going through that time, but some key dates as I lead up to sort of more my tenure. The unit was established in '97 by the Minister of Health at the time at the recommendation of an advisory committee to the minister. In 2013, we released the guiding framework for public health, and with some integral support of the unit, injury prevention was goal 5 in that guiding document that's guided public health for the last 10 years. In 2017, the unit supported the BC Injury Prevention Committee in an extensive process, provincial prioritization process, to identify 3 priorities within this province. Those of, and I always get this one wrong, falls and fall-related injury among community-dwelling adults, older adults, transport-related injuries, as Selena mentioned, and youth and self-harm. And it was right around then, I think I started to mature in my role a little bit. And as we were trying to progress this business case, it landed with a bit of thump in our internal public health governance. Not because of any of the content and quality of the work there, but we got caught in some process issues, I would say. So we took a step back, dusted ourselves off. And I won't go too far into that because I'll end up on a soapbox and we probably don't have enough time for that today. So I'll just leave that aside. We can go offline later if you really want my true opinion on it. But we didn't go to that work, that quality didn't go to waste, because as Selena mentioned, it proved invaluable in informing the priorities and actions, and a piece of work I'm very proud of, which was the BC Ministry's Injury Prevention Strategic Policy Framework and Action Plan. Released in 2020, I think. I had 2021 in my notes, but I was like, I think it's 2020, to engage and guide the health system, key ministries in the sector, and stakeholders to contribute to a significant reduction in the incidence of injuries and severity of injuries, while alleviating inequities that we see in the system. And so it's from that time that, I've really started to mature in my role, really get an understanding, engage through the process, through these actions with the BCIRPU more fulsomely. And I'm really proud of some of the achievements we've been able to make together. The advancement of our falls prevention strategy, which has now actually been expanded to be frailty prevention more generally, with a strong focus on falls prevention, all supported by the BCIRPU. Thinking about many active transportation initiatives we are engaged in over the last few years, stemming from our reducing traffic incidents, injury. Think about administering our provincial Vision Zero in traffic safety grant program, now in our 3rd year, fully supported by the BCIRPU, and so in partnership with MODI and other provincial agencies, and how the unit is supporting the work of the Injury Prevention Committee to identify potential public health actions to address youth suicide and self-harm. I'm very proud of the work that we've done together and what we've been able to advance in the space of injury prevention over the last number of years. And so as I was thinking about today and reflecting on what is it that makes the BCIRPU special, that gives it that little extra shine in this province. And I was reflecting on that journey, and what I saw really was one of remarkable growth and achievement, with contributions that have transcended, mere statistics and data, because the unit has played a pivotal role in influencing and shaping provincial policy and programs that have saved lives and, prevented immeasurable harm, really, when you think about it. I also note, what's that, Shine? I also note the unit's unique links to government, to institutions, to experts in the field, to community leaders that have really made them the engine of injury prevention in this province for the last 25 years, playing a key role in coordinating intervention efforts across the built environment, legislation, and policy. I've observed their efforts through research, surveillance, translation of evidence and knowledge for policymakers like myself, for practitioners and the public in general, to improve the lives of those living in British Columbia, to reduce injury inequities, including those experienced by our Indigenous peoples and others, and really to reduce the unnecessary preventable impacts that this has on our health system. And, and I watch this and I see it's all done with such a high level of integrity, professionalism, trust, and quality. And that's not easy to do for 25 years and maintain. So it's good for that. But somehow you do, because I've entered in late. And that's all I see. Integrity, professionalism, trust, quality. So that's sort of the reflecting. But as I reflected, I also found myself sort of looking forward, looking ahead to the challenges and opportunities that face all of us on our road ahead. The field of injury prevention is ever evolving. And with the BCIRPU at the forefront of research and innovation, we are poised in this province to really build on our achievements, address emerging threats, and continue to make British Columbia safer and healthier place for all. So I'd like to take this opportunity to express on behalf of the ministry our deep gratitude and appreciation to the dedicated team at the BCIRPU, past and present, for your tireless efforts. Your work has made a profound difference to the people of British Columbia, difference in lives of countless individuals and families across our province. And I extend my heartfelt thanks to all of you, the symposium participants. Your engagement, expertise, and commitment to injury prevention are instrumental in our shared mission to create safer communities and healthier lives for all British Columbians. So in closing, as we embark on this symposium to celebrate 25 years of outstanding work, let us renew our commitment to the principles of evidence-based research, collaboration, and innovation, because that's what got us here today, and that's what will get us through tomorrow. So together we continue to drive positive change and protect the well-being of our people in British Columbia. So thank you. I'm really looking forward to this day of inspiring discussions and insights as we commemorate this remarkable achievement. So congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your unwavering support. And we're supposed to take a
Okay, so picture.
picture here. Andy, do you want to come to the picture? Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Our next speaker is Dr. Jeff McKee. As you may know, the province now has a network of individuals who work in each health authority through the BC Centers for Disease Control. We are most thankful for the support from BC CDC and would now like to welcome up Dr. Jeff McKee to come up and speak to the importance of our regional health authority leads. Dr. McKee completed his MD, PhD, and specialty training in public health and prevention medicine at the University of British Columbia. He previously worked as a medical health officer at Vancouver Coastal Health, providing support for the coastal rural region, population health, Indigenous health, and the public health surveillance unit. He is currently the medical director of population and public health at BCCDC, which is focused on the prevention of chronic disease and injury through supporting health promotion and healthy public policy. The PPH team also supports the center with knowledge generation, synthesis, and translation activities related to population health. Dr. Jeff McKee.
Thanks so much. I'm just gonna pull up my notes here. Okay, perfect. Well, it's wonderful to be here, and I was reflecting, and I think Jonathan spoke so well to much of the data and the importance and really just the recognition of the important role that the BCIRPU has played in this province. I mean, 25 years is just an amazing achievement, not only to have been playing that role for so long, but also to continue the growth that's happened, that you're not in a place that's playing any smaller role. You've grown and you've become even more and more integral into the work that we do in this province. I was going to start here. First of all, I just want to also recognize the wonderful opening from Elder Price, and that I I'm very grateful to be here today on the traditional unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people, and recognize that this morning I came from where I reside as a settler on the traditional unceded territory of the Squamish Nation, on what's colonially known as this Lower Sunshine Coast. And as we're talking about prevention, I think Jonathan spoke so well to the evidence-based interventions that we have available for what are mostly preventable injuries. It also just made me reflect on that when we speak of prevention, it's not just those immediate prevention activities. It's also the broader systems that lead to injuries. And when we think, for example, about the history of colonization and how that has led to so many injuries that are preventable among populations, is not only a matter of addressing traffic safety and many of these things that are the immediate mechanisms of injury, but also those deeper systems and the harms of colonization that continue to lead to many of the inequities that we see. I was also going to speak some of the data, but Jonathan has done it so well, I'm not going to repeat it, and also figure that we're likely to hear even more about why injury is such an important topic today, why the work that the unit has done has been so impactful and continues to remain so impactful and so important to continue to build capacity in. We've already heard the high burden of morbidity and mortality related to injury from what's mostly preventable injuries in this province. I was just going on our app from the BCCDC that looks at the primary causes of mortality. Injuries are so prevalent there to the point where they actually have to split apart mechanisms of injury to have them labeled there. We look to one of our major public health emergencies right now with the unregulated drug toxicity crisis, again, driven by injury through poisonings. We look to other age groups where we see the highest rates of morbidity and mortality being led by injury. Again, it underscores how important a public health topic this is and how we continue to need to do that more work and in order to prevent this cause of morbidity and mortality. I think also, as Jonathan much more articulately put than I did, than I had prepared, but the ongoing high costs of injury as well to the system. Not that that's often our primary driving force, but also recognizing that not only do we see extremely high burdens to the healthcare system, but also to the lives and of people outside of the healthcare system, and those indirect costs that we also see borne resulting from injury. And this really underscores the importance of this ongoing collaboration we have in public health within BCIRPU, and why at BCCDC we place so much importance on that collaboration and the need to continue to enhance our capacity to work in this area. BCCDC hasn't always been involved in injury. It was actually only fairly recently that the team that I'm part of joined the BCCDC. I think it's probably going on about 6 years now or so, or prior it was in a different part of PHSA. But the relationship had been there with the BCIRPU and working with injury prevention. And since the unit has moved, or since the PPH service line has moved over to BCCDC, we've continued to stress the importance of enhancing that capacity to support injury prevention initiatives in the province as a key area of public health work. While we had initially had that strong relationship, it was much more recently that BCCDC found further investments to expand our internal capacity, which really is founded on the support that the unit has provided in the form of 5 new injury prevention leads, which are embedded in the health authorities. This was based off of a business case that Jonathan mentioned earlier that had gone forward, really stressing the need for that enhanced collaboration, enhanced support, not only provincially, but within the regions across the province to really further the work around injury prevention. And since then, we found it has been seen an incredible amount of work to further enhance the networks that we have across the province, really founded upon those relationships that have been in existence for some time. The Injury Prevention Unit has played a pivotal role in this. And it has really been a driving force in developing just a strong network of injury prevention work across the province. This is with key champions within the regions, but all really founded upon the driving force of evidence generation and synthesis that we have seen developed over the 25 years of the unit. I was just reflecting on my recent experiences working with the injury prevention teams and with the injury prevention committee, which is, I think, as was mentioned earlier, one of the key public health committees that we have in the province working on injury prevention. And it's been seen as one of the most high performing committees in the province related to the public health work. And the question always comes up, why? What's the special sauce that the committee has? We see, as we've had recent presentations to various committees from the Injury Prevention Committee, and people always say it's so evidence-based. There's so much work done in advance for any decisions that they're making, identifying interventions to support, and really moving the work forward. And so, what is it about that? And really, a lot of it comes back to the work that the Injury Prevention Unit has done in building that network, building those collaborations to support the capacity for us to do evidence-based injury prevention work in this province. And again, it keeps coming up. And I think it just really speaks to all of the work that has been done over 25 years and those collaborations that have been developed with BCCDC through our teams, with the regions as well as they reach out. And it has really placed us well to meet the current issues that we're facing and to continue to build capacity to move forward injury prevention efforts in this province. So with that, I'm not going to repeat a lot of the things that have already been said, but I just want to, again, recognize the amazing amounts of work BCIRPU has done over the 25 years and how we're in such a good place now to move this forward and continue to build off of those, build off of the foundation that they've made, and continue to invest more so that we can move forward to support the health and well-being of people throughout the province. So, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Okay, we'll now start. We'll start with kicking off the BCIRPU presentations in the 5-year increments. We will now be welcoming our invited speakers, some of whom have previously collaborated with us and others who currently remain in partnership with us. They will be sharing their experiences and insights on their work with BCIRPU. These partnerships have played an instrumental role in shaping the trajectory of our ongoing activities and initiatives. As you can see on the screen, This will be broken up into 5-year chunks, starting now with 1998 to 2002. Dr. Sean Peck. I would like to invite him to join me now. Dr. Sean Peck was BC's Deputy Provincial Health Officer from 1995 to 2004. It was during this time that he was instrumental in enabling the establishment of the BC Injury Research and Prevention Unit. He trained in medicine at the University of Cambridge and the London Hospital in England. After working for 5 years in British hospitals, he emigrated to Victoria, BC with his wife in 1969. He was a family physician for 9 years before obtaining an MSc and FRCPC specialty in community medicine at UBC. He was the medical health officer in Prince George, the deputy medical health officer for the City of Vancouver, and the medical health officer for the Capital Regional District. Since so-called retirement in 2004, he has been a public health consultant. His presentation will identify some of the issues encountered in continuing to make injury prevention a vital public health issue. Sean, thank you.
Thank you, Shalina. I'm absolutely delighted to be here today. And thank you for the invitation to speak at this 25th anniversary. I don't know why I'm lumpy about it, but I'm so pleased to see how well you've done all this time. It's very gratifying to observe the success of the unit today and the many activities the unit is involved in today to support the reduction of injuries throughout the province. I would like to tell you the story of how BCIRP you got started. Some of you have heard the story before, but it's really kind of funny. Public health policymaking is never simple or predictable. After having, in 1995, the Minister of Health, Paul Ramsey, established an injury prevention advisory committee to develop a coordinated, comprehensive approach to reduce unintentional injuries in British Columbia. I was the chair of the committee, and we produced a report, BC Injury Free, a framework for action, in February 1997. After having the report printed, I met with the Assistant Deputy Minister as he had some concerns about the release of the document, which I was able to work around. He then looked at the recommendations, one of which was to establish an expert injury prevention research group. He then asked me how much money was needed. Off the top of my head, I just said $500,000. I mean, I didn't know. And so he said, well, I can give you 250,000. And so then I went to the medical director of the Children's Hospital and said, hey, look, I've got 250,000. How about you raise another 250,000 and we can establish this injury unit? And that's what we did. And Paminda Rayner was the first hired director. And obviously, Shalina, you were hired shortly after. So that's how it all started. Extraordinary. Anyhow, my own experience and interest in injury as an important public health issue started when I was in Prince George as the medical health officer in 1980. A few years before I arrived, there had been many traffic crash fatalities around Prince George involving young men. As a result of this, the community got mad and formed a group called Take the Car Out of Carnage. They set out to shock the community. The father of one young driver appeared on TV showing his son's death certificate. Crashed vehicles were displayed in shopping malls. Many recommendations were made, and one result was that the province introduced seatbelt legislation. During a 6-year period following this, there was a 50% drop in traffic crash fatalities in Prince George. So that was a wonderful example of community engagement and, empowerment. Another story I would like to tell you is how bicycle helmets became the law in British Columbia. The BC Medical Association have been strong advocates, taking out TV ads showing crushed watermelons, describing what happened to the brain after a head injury. Government started to draft legislation, but it was not until Dr. Tom Perry, who was a cabinet minister and bicyclist, came to the provincial health office one day and asked what had to be done to make bicycle helmets a legal requirement. We said, here's a package. All you have to do is to create an order in council. And that's how it happened. It needed one advocate, but the important message is all the work had been done to develop the legislation and stuff ahead of time. I was fortunate to be a member of several provincial territorial committees, and we made some progress in getting injury prevention and control, and particularly making surveillance a national issue. However, for a reason I never really understood, Health Canada, who had a couple of very able and committed people, decided to disband the staffing and support for injury prevention. Today we have CHIRP, the Children's Hospital Injury Reporting System, which is somewhat limited in the data available as it does not represent the whole country. On the other hand, there is this IDOT information system, which appears to be a step forward, not that I know exactly the details of it. Most of you know the 3 E's of injury prevention: education, engineering, and enforcement. In terms of effectiveness, engineering, like seatbelts, work best. Enforcement, like speed cameras, next. And then education, safety promotion. There should also be included a 4th, evaluation. This is where the BCIRPU comes in, and equity, ensuring that those more vulnerable, such as First Nations, equally benefit from injury prevention and control measures. I would like to congratulate BCIRPU in recently obtaining a significant grant to promote firefighter injury prevention, I read in a government press release. One success we had in my time was a result of the work of Vicky Scott. I don't know whether she's online, but she's not here today, who was working at BCIRPU. With the help of Vicky, we produced a special provincial health officers report on the prevention of falls and injuries among the elderly in 2004. Some of you may have remembered this. Following this, we contracted with a filmmaker to make a video and also public service announcements. These announcements continued for several years. The report resulted in paying a lot of attention, particularly in care facilities, to the prevention of falls. It was a great day when Vicky received an award for the promotion of this report. Even after I so-called retired 19 years ago, I continued to advocate for speed cameras to be introduced. The province previously had a photo radar program, but the Gordon Campbell government cancelled the program. BC's program was not well designed and relied on police officers in vans being paid overtime to catch speeders. However, the evaluation of the program was that it was effective in reducing speed-related crashes, injuries, and deaths. The province of BC has continued to resist developing a comprehensive speed camera program, which has been shown to be highly effective in reducing road traffic crash deaths and injuries in other jurisdictions. There is a red light program that does also record speed, and people are fined if they are exceeding the speed limit detected at the red light camera. Speed camera, on the other hand, should be placed in places like the Malahat and the Sea to Sky Highway to reduce high-speed crashes, which cause so much injury and disability, etc., and deaths. Many provinces have speed camera programs, including Alberta. In other countries, there are different types of speed camera programs and variable fines. In the past, there's been support from many organizations in BC for a comprehensive speed camera program in addition to the red light program. All it needs is a provincial order in council. One of the things I learned is that if you want to introduce the most effective methods of injury prevention and control is to look to other countries. Australia has always been an inspiration. They have a national injury surveillance unit at Flinders Heart and Medical Research in Adelaide. Australia was often the first in the world to introduce awareness and legislation for such issues as sleepy driving, seatbelts, and speed cameras. I noticed that there was a 14th World Conference on Injury Prevention and Safety Promotion, International Injury Prevention Control Conference in Adelaide in 2022. During my time, we were fortunate to host in Canada an International Injury Prevention and Control Conference. I was pleased to see that today that we have a Canadian Collaborating Centre for Injury from which BCIRPU is a member. There is more that could be done with surveillance. I tried at one time to get acceptance that there could be surveillance in all emergency rooms in BC. The data would greatly help in identifying preventable injuries. Lack of appropriate data hampers the necessary information to initiate injury prevention control, particularly at the local level. The IDOT system seems to be a helpful source, but I'm not sure of its data sources and whether in some place in Canada there is emergency room data available. I was pleased to see that in 2023, the province published an injury prevention strategic policy framework that illustrates there is a lot of done in the province, and BCIRPU, as has been mentioned, has played a large part of that. However, I have to comment, I cannot resist commenting, the government is very good at developing processes, but what is needed is more focus on the outcomes, that are injury and deaths and injuries being reduced. Processes are great, but outcomes are what matters. Could there be more attention paid to publishing the success of the outcomes, injuries and injury deaths? I was going to mention some data here, but Jonathan Robinson has covered that really well. As a final few words, forgive me if I'm not fully up to date. It's amazing, however, how quickly you can find information on the web these days with the help of Dr. Google. I also find that ChatGPT quite fascinating. Well, I asked the question of ChatGPT, are speed cameras effective in reducing road traffic crashes? In about 15 seconds, I had a very comprehensive yes answer. And I would recommend it to you. I mean, I'm amazed how comprehensive you get out of ChatGPT. In my time as a public health official, I learned that where there is an injury prevention issue that needs a change or a new government policy, you need to make sure you have all the evidence prepared and program plans ready. And I think Jeff McGee mentioned this idea that you've got to have those plans ready because you never know when there's going to be a chance. You never know when you may be able to seize the moment. And this happened with the founding of BCIRPU, the introduction of seatbelt legislation, and in the introduction of bicycle helmet legislation. Maybe one day it will happen for a comprehensive speed camera program. It might need a traffic crash due to some speeding, a tragic traffic crash due to speeding to change the political will, but it could result in the introduction of a program in BC. All it needs is an order in council. Thanks for the invitation, and congratulations to the BCIRPU for all your good work.
Why don't I put my hand?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. This way? Absolutely.
There we
Thank
go.
you very much. Thank you. You said 3 seconds.
I'll try the regular method, technology. Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Farah Jabali, and like Shell, I'm feeling old today because I've been here for 23 years with the unit. And Shell remembers the worms, measuring the worms, but the way I started is I came in as a regular research assistant, and I was in an interview, and my interview lasted only 10 minutes. And since then, I've been with the unit. I guess I secretly fear not to leave because I don't want to be in any other interview. But really, no, seriously, the interview process these days with an hour and then the assessment, it scares me. But I feel as if I've grown with the unit. I feel that the unit is my family. All the new staff comes, I feel as if I'm kind of a mother to them. I'm not saying grandmother, but I'm saying mother. But yes, I feel that at the unit I've grown. I'm like a family member there. Primarily, my main roles at the unit are to do with data. I do a lot of the data analysis and manage the data sets at the unit. But I also wear a lot of hats, which many of the staff members can tell you they do so as well. So we work as teams, and we're involved in all the projects. I've also done some conference coordination. So it's just a variety of the work that we all do, and it all keeps us going. It's never boring at the unit. It's all fun, and it's all great. And today I have a pleasure of introducing to you some of the speakers that are going to be presenting today. Some of them are going to be in person. Some of them have video addresses, and then some of them are live over Zoom. So you'll probably see them over the Zoom over there. So our first speaker, I'm pleased to introduce to you the founder of the unit, Dr. Parminder Raina, who is a professor in the Department of Health Research Methods, Evidence, and Impact at McMaster University. He specializes in the epidemiology of aging and has expertise in epidemiological modeling, large population-based longitudinal research, and knowledge mobilization. Dr. Raina is a fellow of the Canadian Academy of Health Sciences, holds a Canada Research Chair in Neuroscience, and the endowed Raymond and Margaret Labarge Chair in Research and Knowledge Application for Optimal Aging. Dr. Raina became a member of Order of Canada in 2022 for his research in aging. He is the founding scientific director of the McMaster Institute for Research on Aging and the Labarge Center for Mobility in Aging, and is the lead principal investigator of the Canadian Longitudinal Study on Aging, including Healthy Brain and Healthy Aging Study. Unfortunately, Dr. Raina was not able to make it here in person, but we have a video address for him.
I wanted to take this opportunity to congratulate BCIRPU for reaching 25 years. I can't imagine it has been already 25 years. I remember negotiating the first contract with the help of Dr. Bob Armstrong and Dr. Sean Peck. And in 1998, I think in the March, we delivered our first report to the ministry. I'm very proud of the fact that I started with an entity that has gone on to do wonderful work over the past 25 years under the leadership of Dr. Ian Pike, and all the staff many of the staff that started with me 25 years ago are still there and contributing to the success of BCIRPU. Please accept my apologies for not being there in person, but I'm sure you will enjoy this milestone and many more years to come. Thank you and all the best.
Now you know why my interview lasted 10 minutes. Okay, thank you, Parminder. So our next speaker is Lisa. Lisa has worked at the unit for 15 years, after which she began in a faculty position in 2013 with the School of Nursing in the Faculty of Health and Social Development at UBC Okanagan. She is currently an associate professor at UBC Okanagan, and her research program addresses inclusive and safe physical activity participation for children with development challenges. Her teaching includes graduate and undergraduate courses and is focused on research methods and community health. I've worked with Lisa while she was here at the unit. We have grown together. She did her PhD with us. We talk about families, we talk about children. And Lisa, you've grown since the Safe Baby Project with all the work that you've done. And you've completed your PhD, you have your own research. I'm so proud of you. So thank you for being here, and
Thanks
please.
for the welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you for the nice introduction, Farah. Yes, it's wonderful to be back and see so many familiar faces. It's definitely a family and friendly environment to be part of. Currently, I am, as Bar mentioned, associate professor in the School of Nursing at UBC Okanagan. And I've been a researcher and teacher there at UBCO for already 10 years, which I can't believe, having started there in 2013. Before I begin, I'd also like to acknowledge the privilege I have to live, work, and play on the traditional unceded territory of the Silks Nation in the Okanagan region. And that is where I conduct the majority of my work. So prior to my position at UBCO, I spent close to 15 years as part of the BCIRPU community, and some of the stories about the initial start, I remember some of those early meetings. Actually, I remember a retreat out at UBC where it was, we have this $500,000. What are we going to do? So was lucky to be part of those early conversations about how the injury unit might develop and move forward. So I did serve as one of the first members of the research staff way back in 1998. And after 2 years, work moved to the role of a PhD student under the supervision of Parminder Raina, Dr. Raina, who you just heard from, as well as Dr. Joan Batorf, who's a professor in the School of Nursing at UBC. So this was followed by positions as a postdoctoral fellow and a research associate. So clearly, like many others who have spoken, I didn't want to leave. But I did in 2013 and moved to UBCO. And it's an honor to be here today to help celebrate BCIRPU's 25th anniversary and reflect back on some of the early activities and many accomplishments of the unit. So this slide here, I'd like to share just a few outputs from the early days, and some of these report covers might look familiar to some people. So here you can see some of the first reports that we worked on. So when the unit first started, priorities were guided by the 1997 BC Injury-Free Framework that Dr. Peck mentioned, the framework for action that was developed to address the high rates of injury among children and youth at that time. These early reports played an important role in summarizing patterns and trends and understanding why it was injuries were occurring to children and youth in BC. Two of the reports here from 1999 and 2001, the covers are shown here, and I actually had hard copies on my shelf. One priority area was home and residential injuries among children, and this led to the Safe Baby Project, shown here, down here in the corner with that cute little baby on the cover. For this project, a randomized home safety intervention study was carried out with a community health unit in the Fraser Valley, with about 900 families involved. So it was a larger study in those days. The Sport and Recreation Systematic Review was another major project that was conducted early on and address the priority area of sports injury. So this project took place between 2001 and 2002 and was a collaboration between BCIRPU, CHEO in Ontario, and funded in part by the Rick Hansen Institute. The team reviewed literature for 8 sport areas: skiing, baseball, basketball, cycling, football, ice hockey, rugby, and soccer. This was an extensive project led by Dr. Raina and involved a large team. Just this slide, this next slide here. So several outputs from this particular project can be seen here, and I've just highlighted two publications that were published in 2004. So one was a general overview of the systematic review and its results, and the other was a soccer-specific article. And the reason I've just highlighted these and included the little graphs at the bottom there is that it shows that these publications from those early years have garnered a steady interest over the years, and citations are noted all throughout, including as recent as 2022. So people are still citing them, and I still receive fairly regular emails requesting copies of that soccer article. So that's kind of neat to see. These two articles were not the only outputs. There were conference presentations, as well as you might recall the fact sheets that were developed for each sport as part of the knowledge translation activities. So on the next slide, it's a little hard to summarize all of the different activities and projects over a 25-year period. So I'm just going to rather than talk about specific projects, highlight some of the different concepts and topics and how these have been addressed through ongoing BCIRPU research activities and how they've informed the direction of my current work, academic work at UBC Okanagan. So in the top left there, the blue block shows the focus of my PhD work, which addressed safeguarding efforts of mothers of young children living in lower income environments. This PhD work then led to a particular interest in how caregivers of children with disabilities manage safety concerns. So building an equity lens into that information that was gathered. And this led to a qualitative study while it's here at BC Children's, funded through the telethon. And from that study, I was particularly struck by the many serious safety challenges faced by families, particularly with autistic children. So many safety concerns for those families that they manage. The green squares on the right provide some highlights of work that has been ongoing in BCIRPU and that really emerged from the earlier foundational research. For example, the Active and Safe Central website for sport injury prevention led by Dr. Ian Pike and Dr. Shalina Babul, concussion work research program led by Shalina, along with the Risky Play research program led by Mariana Bersoni, as well as earlier work that I collaborated with Mariana in regards to gendered parenting and child safety. These are also very integral to my research direction. So through creating the summary, I've learned that there were many threads connecting parenting, caregiving, balancing risk and safety, and sport and recreation injury prevention, which have all played major roles in my current work, indirectly and directly. And subsequently, as a researcher, I brought additional equity lenses, including inclusive practices for those with disabilities, addressing factors living in rural settings. And these have provided some new directions. And working in the interior and BC has also been very interesting, as it has raised and highlighted some of those particular issues that are prominent in the interior regions. I'm okay for time. 1 minute, yeah, it's okay. My current studies address, so the current studies that I'm working on right now, and I just kind of showing the different pathways of how the work has progressed. Down at the bottom here, my work focuses on inclusive, safe play and recreation for children with neurodevelopmental disabilities and their families. So that's a bit of a mouthful, but that's where things are at right now. And this includes addressing safe recreation and sport for autistic children and their families, and developing usable online or user-friendly online resources to assist caregivers. The Kids Action Project is another project I'm co-leading, and this addresses inclusive recreation coaching approaches for children with neurodevelopmental challenges. And in this project, we've built a website, developed online trainings, and work with a variety of communities, including several Indigenous communities in BC and elsewhere in Canada as well. So a common thread, I would say, woven through my ongoing research at UBC Okanagan can easily be traced back to the excellent and varied experiences that I gained while working with BCIRPU. So my experiences and work here and the collaborations and friendships made have really strongly influenced the academic path that I have taken. So I won't talk about all of these. I just wanted to highlight some of the partnerships and collaborations that I've built both within and beyond BCIRPU, and just to note as well that through my teaching at UBCO School of Nursing, and there's a lot of teaching involved, I've ensured that close to several hundred nursing students in taking community health courses know about the Haddon Matrix and understand injury prevention concepts such as the 3 E's, and also understand the relevance and importance to their future work as nurses in community health settings. So it might not always be a topic that they're that familiar with. So in summary, these are some of the reflections that I had about the characteristics and the positive factors that that BCRPU, kind of some of what, what's in the special sauce. I think there's a lot in the special sauce, and these are some of the ideas that I came up with. So I'd like to say thank you to the many wonderful colleagues and friends here at BCRPU. May your path ahead be as innovative and productive as the previous 25 years have been. Thank you very much.
Hello, everybody. My name is Alex Zhang, and I'm a biostatistician here, that's a mouthful, here at the unit. I work closely with Farah on all things data related and to support all the programs and initiatives championed by our colleagues and collaborators. And I'm also here to introduce our next speaker, Ms. Frances McDougall. Frances has been working as a clinical nurse on the birth unit at BC Children's. And through her experience there, gave her unique perspective on the common cause of this childhood trauma. Over the years, Frances developed relationships with families whose children she cared for, and her firsthand how little education they had received through public health, media, and other education channels. This gap in public education has prompted Frances to develop the Early Childhood Burn Prevention Program, Two Hots for Tots. The program was launched provincially in 2012 in partnership with BC Children's Hospital and the BC Professional Firefighters. The program is also promoted nationally by Parachute Canada, and today, Two Hots for Tots is owned and operated by the BC Professional Firefighters and is offered as an online resource. And with 2 young children at home, I can definitely say it's an invaluable resource. So please welcome Ms. Frances McDougall.
Good morning. I'd like to start by thanking the organizing committee for inviting me to present today. Like many of the other speakers, it was an interesting process to go back over the past 16 years and realize what has been accomplished with the support of the BCIRPU and many other key stakeholders. My goal for this program was to shine the light on pediatric thermal injuries, and with the hopes that through knowledge and awareness, many of these tragic injuries could be prevented. I'll give you the head nod for the change of slide. Okay, thanks. So probably the place to start is with the birth of the program and the sliding door moment that really changed the course of my nursing career. I had just returned from an extended maternity leave after the birth of my second child. And the night shift I was working on, I was caring for, well, one of the children I was caring for was a child that had been seriously scalded in the bathtub by hot water. His mother had left the bathroom briefly to throw out a dirty diaper. And in the short space of time that she was out of the bathroom, he used the hot water tap to pull himself up to standing. And in doing so, had turned the hot water on, and then he fell back into the bathtub. And I think the reason this situation impacted me so dramatically or deeply was because of the cumulative effect of the moral distress that had been building over the many years of caring for so many children that had been seriously injured this way. And the fact that my son was the same age as this toddler, but I would never be sitting by his bedside feeling guilt, remorse, and shame over a momentary lapse of supervision. And there was this guilty awareness that I had knowledge that other parents didn't, and I wanted to share that with other people. Thanks to my naivety, I had no idea how difficult that task would be or how many years it would take. So I knew a lot about pediatric thermal injuries, but I knew nothing about injury prevention, social marketing, or research. And thanks to the BCIRPU team, which is really a mouthful, I've got to say. Shalina, Ian, Farah, Mariana, Eric, everyone, and I'm sorry if I've forgotten someone, they mentored me in every sense of the word. And I'm so grateful for their generosity in teaching me and mentoring me all through the years. Without their support, I know this program would not have been as successful as it was. Thank you. So I thought it would be helpful to give you just a very brief overview of the partnership structure that was created to support the program. In 2007, I received funding from BC Children's Hospital and the BC Professional Firefighters Burn Fund to start developing resources for this program. And then a letter of agreement was developed in 2012 to provide a framework for this partnership because nothing like this had ever been done before. However, in 2016, Children's decided to decommission the Safe Start program, which my goal was to develop the program and give it to them to manage and administrate. And then, like I say, the program was decommissioned and we were left hanging for a while trying to figure out what to do. So in 2017, I gifted the program to the Burn Fund and they became the owners and administrators of it. I remained on as the unofficial volunteer program manager for the remaining years until 2020, when I stepped down and retired from Children's. I know this is a busy slide, but I wanted to somehow capture all the amazing work that was done over this time period, and largely in collaboration with the BCIRPU and many key stakeholders. Again, time won't allow me to get into a lot of detail here, but I did want to highlight some important studies and reports that were completed during this time. The first was the evaluation of the Too Hot for Tots program in 2011. And with the successful results of this impact evaluation, we were able to determine or prove that the program had the desired impact on changing caregivers' knowledge, attitudes, and practices around burn prevention in the home. And that was the green light we needed to launch the program provincially in 2012. Over the next few years, many doors were opened because of this positive evaluation and partnerships were created. So it was really in large part to the unit believing in me and the mission of this program that I was able to continue on and keep building. I also partnered on with the BC Injury Prevention Unit on a number of PCAs over this time period. And they always published information in their newsletters when reports came out, or I was doing workshops around the province. They did what they could to help support my efforts. The last study I wanted to highlight was published in 2020, and it was called The Cost of Burns in Young Children. This was such an important study to do because children who are burned require more medical care than young children, and I should say young children, than young children who are injured from other sources. And for that reason, we really wanted to highlight the significant financial burden on the healthcare system and society. And the results of this study clearly demonstrated the significant financial and human cost that pediatric burns place on the healthcare system and society. Our hope is that this study will continue to provide the evidence that it is worth putting money and effort into prevention programs like this, and we hope that they will continue to invest in these efforts. In an attempt to try and share some of the impacts or outcomes of the program, I went back and looked over what I'd done. And so one of the things I thought I could speak to was some of the training I did with educators around the province. So with the goal of reaching as many people as possible, I thought that I would start by training the trainers. And so in 2013, I developed the Train the Trainer workshop. and traveled the province teaching workshops. I gave, over a 7-year period, I gave 40 workshops and trained over 500 family service providers and 200 firefighters. Given that each facility had the potential to reach 700 families, I estimated that 28,000 families would have potentially reached some, being able to be reached and influenced with this information. Another positive outcome of this workshop was that most, if not all, of these centers implemented a hot drink policy after the workshops. And what this meant was that when caregivers came to the center, they had to drink their hot beverage in a travel mug. And if they showed up with a to-go cup, they were offered a travel mug that the center had purchased for that express purpose. So not only was this, a much safer way to drink a hot beverage when young children were running around, but it was also excellent role modeling. To determine the estimated reach through various media channels, I contacted the specific organizations that I'd partnered with over the years and looked at how many subscribers or viewers they had. There were 130,000 media impressions over this 8-year period in BC and 14.8 million views on the net during National Safe Kids Week in 2015. And I partnered with Parachute on that initiative, and we included some information about burns in the home. So that was a lot of people we reached through that initiative. During Burn Awareness Week each year, myself or one of the Burn Fund representatives was invited to be interviewed on Global or Breakfast TV. And Shaw Cable aired the full-length version of Too Hot for Tots, which is 16 minutes in length, and it was aired in multiple languages throughout the province and in Alberta for a couple of years. It's hard to determine the estimated reach of the print media, but suffice to say that people were obviously reached through that medium as well. Due to the multiple impacts of the pandemic, the Burn Fund stopped offering workshops in 2020 and decided to transition to an online training platform. This e-learning module was launched in 2023. It's free, it takes about 10 minutes to complete, and you can access it through visiting the BC Professional Firefighters Burn Fund website. I will never know how many burns have been prevented because of the Too Hot for Tots program, but I'm satisfied that more people know about preventing these injuries than they did 16 years ago. And because of that, hopefully many of these injuries have been prevented. After one of my workshops, an educator came up to me and said, Frances, your message is getting out there. And then she proceeded to tell me about visiting her son who'd recently had a new baby on the mainland. And that when she wanted to hold the baby while drinking her tea, he clearly said, no, Mom, you can't do that. And he had just been to a health unit and received information about preventing burn injuries in young children. It was actually the first time I'd realized that the campaign had been so wide-reaching and that so many people had really been affected, because you keep doing this work, but you don't really realize the reach of it. And I have to say, it was incredibly rewarding to think back and realize that together, through the partnership with the BCIRP and many wonderful organizations, we were able to accomplish so much. Thank you. Okay.
Our next speaker is Ms. Karen Sadler. She'll be talking on the PURPLE program. In 2017, 2 days before I started at the unit, Karen joined the Prevent Shaken Baby Syndrome BC team, or as we know it as the PURPLE program, as its manager. Her responsibilities include program delivery, training, outreach, and community education. She is the point person for knowledge translation and new initiatives with the PURPLE program. Karen holds a Master's of City Planning from the University of Manitoba and specializes in collaborative approaches to community outreach and underrepresented populations and cross-sectoral integration. Outside of work, she can be found doing yoga, baking, and seeking out sunny spots. And at the office, she brings immense positivity every day and always brightens the day. So please, Ms. Karen Sadler.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I'm going to be old at the moment and just set my timer because I'm not great at not rambling on. So my name is Karen Sadler. I'm the current manager of the Prevent Shaken Baby Syndrome BC program, which is a program of BC Children's Hospital and housed within the BCIRPU unit. And I just want to say I'm grateful for being able to live and raise my family on the traditional lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. So just a little bit about Prevent Shaken Baby Syndrome BC. It has been a long-standing program within the unit and started in 2007. And we want to talk about the importance of education. We believe it's important that we inform the public about early infant crying, that we normalize the frustrating feelings that can emerge as a result of inconsolable crying and the pressures of caring for a young infant. That parents understand that it's okay to place a baby in a safe place, walk away and take a break, as well as we advocate that it's never okay to shake or harm a baby. And to meet our aims, we deliver the Period Appropriate Crying program, which is a universal education program that is delivered to all parents in BC. Next slide, please. So I've been with the unit since 2017, and the program has been running since 2000 and started at 2003 with an environmental scan looking at the need of information around prevention of shaken baby was important. In 2004 to 2007, a randomized control trials were ran looking at the parent helping infants and over the 3-year period, and resulted in 2007, the Period Appropriate Crying program partnership with the National Centre on Shaken Baby Syndrome, BC, was commenced. 2007, as you can look back at the images on the left and the top, those were the old branding images. So that's what parents were first confronted with in terms of the overwhelming feeling of an infant crying that can't be stopped no matter what the parents did in terms of the soothing. In 2009, the program became universal, which means that it is delivered to all parents who deliver new infants in hospitals and by maternity, in maternity hospitals across BC, as well as midwives and home births. In 2011, the Period Appropriate Crying video was launched, and bless my predecessors who were in charge of the distribution of these. Right now we're down to a small book. I should have brought a copy, but before they were DVDs, and the amount of volume in terms of the booklets and the DVDs and the storage capacity that they're squirreled away, as anyone in our unit knows, are squirreled away in all sorts of nooks and crannies. We have materials, and I can materialize those, as well as the caps, which was a program called Click for Babies, which started in 2012. We stopped the universal public campaign of that in 2020 because of COVID. However, we do have a lovely image of some of the crafty ladies out of the Kennedy Senior Center, which have been instrumental in supporting our program in terms of their outreach and their donation of baby caps. So those lovely ladies there, collectively with their group, have donated over 16,000 knitted caps to our program to be distributed across BC. The bags you see there, that was me being invited to tea this year and picking up 4,600 caps that were knitted during the COVID period. So anybody who needs caps, we are doing ad hoc requests, and we do send them out to community when requested. They are lovely. They are an example of the program. There's the research pieces, which I will get into, but just the value add of the people who volunteer, who take such commitment and pleasure in supporting infants in BC is astronomical. So a shout out to them. Next slide, please. So this is coming into when I started the program in 2017 as the manager, the new app was introduced. So the old DVDs were replaced by a new app. In 2019, we developed an infographic in collaboration with nurses and nurses and parents. It was an iterative process. It went on for a while. We did a bunch of focus groups. We did a bunch of feedback with parents. And one group in particular, which I'd like to give a shout out to, is the Musqueam pre and postnatal group, who provided invaluable feedback in terms of ensuring that the infographic was understandable and connected and resonated with parents. In 2022, we had new purple videos and materials which were re-released that are much more broad in terms of diversity and types of family. In 2023 and this year, it's up. It's now in collaboration with the Learning Hub. So we have the new BC specific implementation training, which is available for all, as well as our new website. So please check it out at don'tshake.ca. Please. In terms of research, the program has been critical in, it has resulted in a statistically significant reduction in traumatic head injury by child maltreatment rates, which impacts our most vulnerable population. And there was an 8-year outcome of implementation of abusive head trauma prevention, which was in child abuse and neglect, and it won the article of the year. And so this slide epitomizes the value that this program brings and continues to bring to BC and BC families. Next slide, please. So just a little bit about the current research. Thanks to the BCIRPU, we do get to continue taking on research projects that solidify and strengthen our program. Currently, we're creating virtual education modules to improve infant crying and head trauma health literacy, which is quite a mouthful. We call it e-learning. This has been part of a CIHR planning grant we got for developing this tool. And the key piece that we're really looking forward to are we're running focus groups with Indigenous, immigrant, and refugee new parents, parents to be, and those who identify as parents, to make sure that we're getting lived experiences and gender experiences within the diverse population of Canada, that we want to make sure that our materials are reflective of the population that we support. We're also doing a research that was done on, does the PURPLE program have an actual impact on infant physical abuse rates beyond traumatic head injuries? And what is the impact of traumatic head injury by child maltreatment rates in BC because of COVID? I don't know how to even condense some of the thank yous that we need to do in terms of the universal delivery and the success. This is a large part and would not be feasible without the support and dedication of all maternity, public health, primary care and community health nurses, as well as community providers which include family physicians, social workers, pregnancy outreach workers, foster parents, doulas. All these people undertake the training and provide Purple education and support soon to be and new parents with Purple materials and resources. This Purple exposure that we talk about being a multi-exposure would not be possible without the support of the nurses. And just a little bit of a fun fact, over 6,500 individuals have been trained since 2012. We have distributed over 500,000 Purple copies over the years, and nurses have been instrumental in supporting our continued evaluation. Next slide, please. I'd also like to thank our partners in delivery. This includes the Fraser, Interior Island, Northern, Provincial and Vancouver Coastal Health, who have been fantastic in supporting PIRPL operationally. A special thanks to the First Nations Health Authority and their maternal child health table, who have partnered to develop an informational package that has gone out to all FNHA and service organization nursing stations and health centers to make sure that PIRPL is spread across remote communities. A thank you to BC Children's Hospital, the Foundation, the Research Institute, and UBC for making this possible. And the small sample, just a sampling of the multiple of collaborations that we've had to date. Last slide. And just thank you to our funders, MCFD, who funded us since the inception, the Ministry of Health, who took over our core funding in 2022, 2023, the BC Children's Hospital Injury Research and Prevention Unit. I would like to especially thank for their ongoing in-kind support, their mentorship, the leadership we've been provided, and the fact that we are able to continue this program. And I would like to close with just, there's a special message from the National Center on Shaken Baby Syndrome that I'd like to pass on to you guys.
Hi everyone, it's Chantel and Danielle with the National Center on Shaken Baby Syndrome. We wish we could be there in person with you to congratulate you all for everything you have accomplished these last 25 years. The lives you have impacted is countless.
Our organization has had the privilege of working with the BC Injury Research and Prevention Unit for nearly 15 years. The Periparpal Crying Program was provided to British Columbia families starting in 2009. You saw to the translation of the program materials so that it could reach all BC families no matter their ethnicity. The years spent evaluating the periparpal crying and their program benefits in a wide array of fields ensured that we at the National Center developed the most comprehensive and effective shaken baby syndrome prevention program in the world. Your research and support has impacted millions of lives across the world and will continue for decades to come. Thank you for everything. It is an absolute honor to call you partners.
Hi everyone, it's Chantel.
I would like to welcome our next speaker, Fire Commissioner Brian Gollington, and he'll be speaking on our recent collaboration on the Fire Safe project. Brian joined the Office of the Fire Commissioner in 2020 as the Fire Commissioner after 28 years as a member of Langley City Fire Rescue Services and Vancouver Fire and Rescue Services. Among other public safety roles, Brian has been a training instructor with the Justice Institute of BC's Paramedic Academy and Fire and Safety Division. As the Fire Commissioner, Brian and his team are dedicated to fulfilling the OFC's mandate, which is focused on fire prevention, education, training, and coordination under the province's fire safety legislation. He is passionate about data and its importance in informed decision-making to ensure that resources are utilized efficiently and effectively to save lives and reduce the risk and fires in communities. We are very excited to be partnering with Brian and his team on the Fire Safe project, and we look forward to all the positive impact it will affect. Please welcome Fire Commissioner Brian Gollington.
Good morning, thanks very much. I was sitting up there and I looked down, I didn't realize how steep it is. So you guys can probably all read my speaking notes here because they're font 16. So first of all, who's going to advance the slide decks? Is that me or you? Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you very much for having me here this morning. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today and share some information on what I think is a great partnership and an initiative that will make our communities and the residents of the province of BC safer. Things are changing. We are seeing some concerning trends. We are contending with drought, wildfires exacerbated with climate change. Our populations are getting older. Our population is increasing, which means more of us are living in apartments, high rises, and living in rural areas that experience wildfires. The OFC and community fire services are working hard to respond to the changes through the enhanced fire prevention education, data analysis, legislation, and support more firefighting training and equipment. The OFC's primary focus is fire prevention, and this initiative, the smoke alarm campaign and partnerships like this are key to those prevention efforts. So prior to jumping straight into the details on the initiative, I want to provide some context by referencing the main reports and initiatives of this year, some current concerning statistics, and the data that is being used to support the smoke alarm campaign. So who are we? Thank you for the introduction, Alex. We are the lead provincial agency for fire prevention and reporting in the province, and we conduct that work through the coordination of local governments, fire services, and other partners. We manage a fires reporting system and work with partners to ensure communication between different reporting applications are collected. We also provide annual reports summarizing all of this data for fire safety awareness initiatives like this one today. We also set the training standards, the minimum training standards for firefighters, structural firefighters across the province that are receiving the training for the tasks that are being assigned to them. We can stand up a provincial fire department in response to large-scale events. This is outlined in the Emergency Program Management Act regulations. Oh, we're jumping one ahead. So fire prevention remains our top priority. The province has provided approximately $11 million this year and next year to support these efforts. We have launched the BC Structure Minimum Training Standards. This document outlines the minimum training standards for all firefighters, regardless of whether they're volunteer or career firefighters, both in the urban and rural settings. We use this data in our annual reports and our educational campaigns to improve safety. We also dedicate significant effort towards public education and prevention and media campaigns. As part of the public education and fire prevention, the OFC has partnered with Statistics Canada and the BC Injury Research and Prevention Unit. Both organizations are key in understanding the rates of fire injury and deaths in BC. Unfortunately, 2022 has been a very challenging year with that respect. We can hold up here for a second on the slide. The 2002 OFC annual report. In 2022, there were 86 fire-related deaths. That's a 46% increase from 2021. In 2021, there were 59 fire-related deaths, a 5% increase from the previous year. So to put things into perspective, I started in this role in 2020, and the 10-year average prior to that was 21 to 23 deaths per year. So in the last 5 years, from 2018 to 2022, we've seen a 207% increase in fire deaths in the province of British Columbia, which is very, very concerning. Factors contributing to the increasing trend in fire-related injuries and deaths in the province and nationally include demographic shifts, increase in population, and an aging population, increase in homelessness, increase in the number of encampments in many communities, changes in land use, increased development and population density in the wildland areas, and changing technology, the use of rechargeable batteries, powered consumed products, improper charging of those devices within homes. In the city of Vancouver last year, there was 5 rechargeable battery explosions where 5 people lost their lives. These numbers are increasing across the country. COVID-19, more people are still working from home, and they're there for longer periods of time. Thank you. Of all the fires reported in 2022, structure fires resulted in the greatest number of injuries and deaths. Most structure fires were residential. The most frequent causes of structure fires is smoking materials and open flames year over year over year. Hasn't changed. Fire demographics. The last 5 years, people over the age of 65 are overrepresented to injury and death by fire. 30% higher than all other age categories in fire deaths. Significant as BC stats in 2021 predicts the 65 and over age group will increase and comprise of almost 24% of the population by 2036 compared to 15% in 2010. Next slide. Thank you. So to reverse the trend, the Office of the Fire Commissioner has partnered with Statistics Canada to identify the high-risk communities and neighborhoods. To solve the problem of fire safety, we must first identify the areas of BC that are most at risk. The Community Risk Reduction Dashboard is a project where we partnered with Statistics Canada which enabled the fire services to pinpoint the neighborhoods at the highest risk for fire and focus what resources were available, and I say limited resources in many communities, to put treatments in place. This dashboard can visually represent spatial patterns of population by fire risk factors, identify linkages between risk factors and fire incident rates, identify target areas for fire prevention programs. So what data is used for this dashboard? There are two main primary data sets. The first is from Statistics Canada, which includes census data and another of multiple deprivation data sets and so forth. There's also the fire information database, so the National Fire Database, all the fires that have taken place in the province of British Columbia over the last 5 years. The dashboard will allow us to visualize each data set separately or together. So if we had a heat dome, the communities can take off all the fire data and we can look by population and so forth where everybody is and where the areas we need to focus to prevent cooling stations and so forth. So there's a number of flooding. We can prepare for evacuation. There's a number of pieces the fire service could do with this tool. So increased ability to identify high-risk populations in areas of the community, monitor their efforts to ensure fire protection programs targeted community areas of risk, gain support for research and best practices, enhance fire prevention program content and delivery, including the use of social media, and customize the fire services response, knowing where the greatest areas of risk are. I'm just going to keep this next slide up at a high level just to show you what it would look like. Each and every community has the ability, sorry, next slide. This is just a screenshot of the dashboard. This is the city of Vancouver here, but we can literally scroll in and you can see the, by color, increased risks, and we can pinpoint right down to the neighborhood by all the data sets that we talked about. I could spend probably an hour just on this part. So we'll shift gears. Thank you. So this is where the BCIRPU becomes involved. Dr. Pike and his team have been integral to tracking the rates of fire injuries and deaths in BC, as well as identify and precipitating the causes of these events. We knew if we wanted to raise the level of fire prevention in BC, we'd want to be working with the BCIRPU. The OFC is partnering with the BC Injury Prevention Unit to identify high-risk communities across the province and installing smoke alarms within those communities. Together, we've created a campaign to raise public awareness on the importance of having working smoke alarm in residential homes. We've also been able to leverage the data in the community risk reduction dashboard to identify communities across British Columbia who would be eligible to receive free working smoke alarms and thereby reducing their individual and ultimately the community's fire risk. This is a two-phase project called Fire Safe, Ignite Awareness and Extinguish Fires. $1.6 million has been allocated to this effort, and it's our goal to have a working smoke alarm in 10,000 residents' homes, reducing the risk for 38,000 people across communities, including First Nations communities by the end of 2024. Is a social marketing organization in BC that delivers marketing campaigns that are aimed to reduce serious injury and death. Phase one, a 4-week campaign. So the kickoff was the 8th, so Sunday, I believe, for a fire prevention week. And I appreciate whoever I shifted spots with because I jumped ahead a little bit in the schedule because we got numerous interviews this afternoon on Fire Prevention Week. But we're just kicking off this week as it relates to phase one, and it's going to move into early 2024. You will see a number of TV commercials, bus stops, social marketing campaigns, and so forth to raise awareness. I don't imagine anybody in here has been to a liquor store, but if you have over the last week, you'll see on the counter another card folder there, have you checked your working smoke alarm? So we are taking every effort to focus on the areas and the people of greatest risk to ensure that we do as much education so people will actually check their smoke alarms and prevent injuries and save lives. Next slide. Phase two. Of this, we will continue to work with fire departments to physically knock on doors to inspect, install smoke alarms in homes within the high-risk communities. With the BCRPU, we will also develop community resource handbooks, step-by-step instructions on how to manage fire prevention, inspections, and installations. The toolkit will also be available to the Indigenous communities or communities who lack these types of resources. The BCRPU will also be integral in the evaluation of this campaign as this extensive experience in this type of work. Baseline questions asking about behaviors around fire-related injury, as well as whether we have a working smoke alarm in their home, were included in Preventable's annual survey in British Columbia's in May of this year. Changes in fire-related outcomes before and after the Fire Safe program will be compared. This is why we're here today. The BCRPU represents a critical component of public safety systems. Prevention is what we do. The increasing number of fire-related injuries and deaths is a very concerning trend, and we need to address it. And as I mentioned in the presentation, we're taking several approaches: resources, data, education, and training. So partnerships are essential, and we're very, very excited to be partner of the BCRPU as we have a large accountability piece under the Fire Services Act. We are committed to continuous improvement and increasing the profile and making British Columbia safer for all. So, you know, my office sits on a countrywide board of Canadian fire marshals and fire commissioners, and just BC and Ontario equate to almost 60+% of all deaths in Canada over the last year. So two provinces that you thought, you know, we might be further ahead. And so we're starting to see the wear-off effect of previous smoke alarm campaigns, previous home safe programs, and so forth. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done as this, and it's really, really unfortunate because there's far too many lives being lost. So really looking forward to, as Dr. Pike, I don't know if he's in the room, but I've talked to him. Oh, there he is. There's nothing more that I would like to see for this program to be successful, so we can look at phase 2 and phase 3 and continue to make British Columbia safer for all. So thank you very much. Thanks so much. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you very much to all our speakers so far. Boy, seeing some of those reports sure was a bit of a throwback, Chilliwack Safe Baby. And what Farah failed to mention, as being with the unit since almost the beginning, and she feels like a mother figure to everybody, she failed to mention she's an exceptional cook and feeds us really well. So now we'll take a 15-minute break. Please, everyone, be back here in the room about 20 after 15 minutes. Yeah, 20 after 11, please. Thank you.
I can help you try. Okay. Yes. No, it's fine.
We can't. Just like, don't get old, right? Oh.
Just like
Oh my gosh. Oh. No, but I did do my, I was in Ottawa and then I did my and then do one down in North America. Oh, yeah. 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 This is really nice. Where'd you get it? So just I need some new blazers. I was trying to on all my blazers. And that doesn't fit me anymore. And I'm like, okay, Leanne, like you're not gonna be back to like maybe like a size 8. You were like 15 years ago. It's time to get with reality here. You need to go shopping with more blazers.
I had a similar thought. Most of my like new blazers that are like size 14, 16 are from Reitman.
Yeah,
Really nice.
I love Reitmans.
Yeah. But then all of my ones that were like size 6, size 8, some few years ago are like completely
Ready? There is a signing board by the registration desk. If you can please sign it. We've been collecting our message boards for 10 years, 20 years, and now this is 25. So it'll be great if you're able to just say a few words if you wish, or just sign your name. Thank you. It is now great pleasure to introduce to you our next speaker. Dr. Mariana Brissoni is BCIRPU's academic scientist, a professor in the Department of Pediatrics and the School of Population and Public Health, and director of the Human Early Learning Partnership at UBC. Her research investigates child injury prevention and children's outdoor risky play, with the aim of creating environments where all children can play outside every day. I have to say this, Mariana, because Mariana has been at the unit for a long time, and I know she holds this against us, but myself, Kate, who's been at the unit for a long time as well, and Shao, we all, and I wish we could frame this moment, we all went on maternity leave at the same time, all 3 of us, and walking into her office, we all announced our maternity leaves at the same time as well. And her face when we told her this was something to be framed. So sorry, but it wasn't planned. The kids are, they're in the 20s. So yeah, we've all raised our kids together and been part of their lives. So welcome. Thank you, Mariana.
Thank you, Mara. Thanks, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here today to reflect on the last 25 years. As far as I joined the injury unit in 2001, just out of a PhD in developmental psychology, where I was like, I really want to make a difference, and I wanted to end up in a place that the research that I did made a difference. And so I ended up, quite by accident, pun intended, at the injury unit, and made some wonderful friends. And we were quite a small and mighty community. We were so small that we got to know each other across the nation and worked together, and just really had a wonderful community together. But there were some issues for me in terms of the work that I was doing, and how injury prevention was approached at the time. And so it was something that created a bit of cognitive dissonance for me, which was the idea that equated risk with danger or hazard. And so really seeing risk and safety on the same continuum. And this is actually a real playground that I visited. So that you couldn't actually have both. You could either have risk or you could have safety. And that didn't really mesh with how I lived my life. It didn't mesh with how I was parenting my children. And most importantly, it didn't mesh with what I knew as a developmental psychologist. And so there was work that built up at the time that really kind of caused things to change for me and for us. So Lisa talked about her postdoc with me, and this is some of the work we did. At the time, we were studying fathers, partly because I was a fairly new mother, 2008, 2009, and trying to figure out how my husband's mind worked. But also in injury prevention, we were trying to convince fathers to act more like mothers. You know, because mothers were the ones that were in charge of safety and injury prevention, and were thinking about these things, and fathers were the ones that were doing risky things with their kids, and we wanted them to stop doing that. And so we were doing this research, but in the course of the research, and certainly as I was having my own kind of reflections on injury prevention, there was a lot of things that fathers were saying that made a lot of sense. And that fit with some of the thinking that I was thinking about in terms of parenting children and developmental psychology and children's need for risk. So through this work, and this was a paper we published quite a while ago in 2011, but we really unpacked the idea that there actually could be a difference between risk and safety, and they're not part of the same continuum, that you could think about them as separate things, that you could actually have a situation where you have a parent who supports risk-taking for their child, but actually does considerations around the safety requirements to keep them safe in those circumstances and to manage some of the bigger dangers or hazards. And we called those folks the prepared adventurers. And so this was kind of early on in the conversation in injury prevention. Around the same time, Ellen Sandseter in Norway published her work on risky play, where she was looking at kids' engagement in this kind of play and the kinds of things that they were saying, which you can see the quotes here. And she developed this definition of risky play, which was thrilling and exciting forms of play involving uncertainty and the chance of physical injury. And so this work really resonated for me. And so I started to unpack it. And each element of this definition is actually quite important. So you've got the thrilling and exciting. You've got kids who are pushing themselves past their typical boundaries and trying new things. And that's really important for kids. Involving uncertainty. They don't know what's going to happen. Could be positive, could be negative. That's kind of the point. They're doing experiments. But this is what drives us crazy as adults and as injury prevention professionals, and certainly the chance of physical injury. And of course, as an injury prevention professional, I was like, how big a chance? What kinds of injuries? How serious? How much do we need to worry about this? So I really wanted to get into this work and unpack it from an injury prevention perspective. But what was interesting really is kind of this dogma at the time around risk and danger and hazard, and how I had to do my own risky play and lean into the uncertainty of raising these concerns within the injury prevention community and seeing, could we think about doing things differently? And so here's where I really have to shout out to the injury unit, to Ian Pike, who was just such a close collaborator from the very beginning, supportive, and gave me that kind of secure base from which to explore these ideas and feel like I could try out some new things and not be kind of professionally left out in the wilderness. So thank you, Ian. And so what we did, it was around, I'm thinking 2012, looking to Shannon, we had a little debate at one of our team meetings with Barbara Marangello, and where we started to air these ideas. And so it was like, okay, how are they going to take it? But things went well, and it kind of gave us some confidence. And so Ian and I planned a symposium, which was at the 2013 Canadian Injury Prevention Conference in Montreal, pre-conference symposium where we invited some great folks to speak around this issue, including some early injury prevention folks. Ian himself, Scott Belair, who's a playground safety inspector, Louise Logan and Pam Fuzeli from Parachute Canada, who came and provided their voice. So we booked a room for 150 people. We're like, oh, maybe a handful will show up. We were oversubscribed. So then I was like, okay, they're here to tell us how angry they are with us. And so I couldn't sleep the night before. I was like, what's going to happen? But the relief in the room was palpable. It was clear that I was not the only one who'd been having these kind of struggling and concerns with how we were approaching risk and safety. Now, not to say that everything was dandy. There were many in the injury prevention community that were not pleased with what we were doing. And I think over the years, we've won a good chunk of them over. But you know, there are some who continue to question the approach. Now, lots has happened since then. And lots of cause to celebrate in terms of making a change for kids in Canada to be able to experience this kind of play, these risk experiences that are so necessary to their health and development and well-being. And unfortunately, I don't have the time to go into how necessary these are, but talk to me afterwards and I'm happy to chat with you. But here's some of the really big milestones over the last couple of decades. So in 2015, a group of us from very different sectors got together and developed this position statement on active outdoor play. And what was interesting for me from that work was that we had people from very diverse disciplines, parks, recreation, education, psychology, public health, etc., all ending up at the same place in terms of the importance of this kind of active outdoor play with its risks for children, and how we all felt passionately about the changes that had to happen in this country to support this work. So we put out this position statement which was more powerful and influential than I could have imagined. And led to a whole bunch of other things, like the Council of Chief Medical Officers of Health put out their own position statement in 2018 supporting ours. The Canadian Public Health Association also put out a position statement supporting ours and providing tools around this work for municipalities. Our position statement was cited in a BC Supreme Court ruling throwing out a playground injury case where the judge said that the children who never hazard a chance are unlikely to develop properly, either physically or emotionally. So that was a very exciting precedent. We had municipalities that were thinking differently about this work and how they were designing play spaces so that they could accommodate risk while managing hazards. We had Safe Kids Week. Parachute Canada ran in 2021, focusing on this issue. And a year later, they did a series of podcasts looking at how can we pop the bubble wrap within our injury prevention approach. And more recently, there was the International Organization for Standardization released playground safety standards, where they highlight the importance of doing benefit risk assessment. So balancing the dangers and hazards and how do you mitigate those while still able to maintain and provide access to children for the risks. This is very exciting. I'm waiting to see what happens in Canada, but the chair of this committee is on the Canadian CSA standard. And lastly, the Canadian Pediatric Society is about to release their own risky play statement, a risky play position statement. So very excited to see the work that comes out of that. So all of that, really because I had a supportive home, more than that, friends, colleagues, and people who journeyed along the path with me on this. And so I thank you deeply. We did it together. Thanks very much.
Hello. Our next speaker is Dr. Rosalma McDonald, and she'll be speaking on the Voices Project. Dr. McDonald is the owner of the consulting firm Catani's Research and Management Services. She has over 35 years of national and regional experience as an Indigenous consultant and administrator. Dr. McDonald is well respected and well known globally for advocacy efforts. Through her work, she has represented over 600 First Nations on national policy issues related to health, social development, disability, and injury prevention, in addition to over 500 tribal disadvantaged populations and jurisdictions in the US. She'll be joining us online, so please welcome Dr. McDonald.
Hello, can you hear me? Yes. Okay, you can't hear me, but you can't see me, but you can hear me. Okay. So thank you. Thank you for this invitation. I'm very excited. In terms of the speakers this morning, you know, I did hear reference to Indigenous and First Nations populations, which was very exciting for me. I want to thank our elder, Roberta Price, for her very passionate opening prayer this morning, and to acknowledge the traditional unceded territory of Musqueam, Coast Salish, and Salish, as well as hello from the territory of the Mohawks of Akwesasne. I want to acknowledge, I guess start by acknowledging and saying a great big nyankoa to the BC Injury Research and Prevention Unit for the support of our project. The Voices Project was a 3-year project, and our core team members were Dr. Pike, and I thought I might see him at some point, maybe with the speakers or in the introductions. Also a partner was Dr. Ellison McPherson from York University, Dr. Emily Buello from the BCIRPU, and Shazia Kumar Karmali and Samantha Bruin. So that was the core team that we've been working together for 3 years. If you go to the next slide, I'll kind of give you a little bit of background, like kind of what everybody else did in terms of like, how did we get here? And in my particular case, I was part of a National Indigenous Disability Working Group that was funded by HRSDC at the time, around 2004, and there were members of the Assembly of First Nations, the Inuit, Tapiriit, Kanatami, and the Métis National Council, as well as other Indigenous injury prevention researchers and experts. And we were doing a lot of work at that time in terms of injury control and Indigenous populations, in terms of injury control framework, which we did in 2002 with AFN. And we presented it at the 6th World Conference on Injury Prevention and Control. And I heard somebody mention the 14th World Conference. So it was a long time ago when we did this. And we also did some work on an Aboriginal societal indicators report that was part of the HRSDC Federal Report on Disability and advancing the inclusion of persons with disabilities. We also did some work on injury prevention and did a strategic approach to prevention from a First Nations perspective. And we also did an impact of injury on children and youth in Australia, Canada, and New Zealand. And it was a tri-country approach to prevention, resiliency, and implications for policy. And then for quite some time, we had injury prevention fact sheets, training manuals, and handbooks on the AFN website in 2006. Next slide. So then we speed forward to 2010, and this BCIRPU did an injury prevention indicators project, and it was done in collaboration with the First Nations and Inuit Children and Youth Indicators Working Group, which included, again, the Assembly of First Nations, the ITK, and the Métis National Council. And we, I remember long meetings of identifying and brainstorming, you know, what are the indicators for First Nations and children in Canada. And there was an injury prevention dashboard of indicators that was developed as a result of that work. And I was on the website the other day, and I see it's still there. So that's a wonderful thing. The next slide. So, as I mentioned, I'm from the community of Akwesasne, the only reservation, First Nation in North America that borders 2 countries, 2 provinces, and 1 state. So we're on the border of the US, Canada, New York, Ontario, and Quebec. So that makes us very unique, and I think that was one of the biggest reasons why we struck up a partnership with the BCIRPU. That's a mouthful, Ian. Anyways, next slide. Next slide, please. So we worked really hard to develop a partnership and approach and guiding principles for the Voices Project. And the Voices Project was totally community-based. It was based on participatory research, local capacity building, and a research agreement that was between the Akwesasne Mohawk Board of Education, our Mohawk Council of Akwesasne, and UBC. And I have to tell you, that research agreement took a year to negotiate. And once we did it, we were off and running and everything was wonderful. And the other thing that was very unique for us was that the project was designed around the principles of ownership, control, access, and possession. Next slide. So in terms of the methods and objectives of the Voices Project, the idea was to identify leading determinants of Akwesasne children and youth injury, to identify gaps in children and youth injury prevention efforts, and to inform the development of a comprehensive, holistic Akwesasne child and youth injury prevention strategy, and then to increase community capacity to address children and youth injury. Next slide. So one of the products that I'm so proud of, the products that we produced as part of Voices. One of the products, or one of the outcomes, was an Akwesasne environmental scan. And so the environmental scan looked at injuries and risk factors, again, because the community borders Ontario, Quebec, and New York. So we had to do an environmental scan that looked at risk factors in Akwesasne from those perspectives, as well as from an international perspective. Next slide, please. So another outcome of the project was a summary report of interviews with key informants in Akwesasne. So we did about 15 interviews with different key informants, the fire department, health and holistic healing, and the women's shelter, and education, and a whole variety of departments within the Mohawk Council that have mandates that would overlap with injury prevention. So the next slide is another aspect of the research that we did, which was a community survey on injury prevention. And we got, I think it was about 497 surveys back, and it gave us a good picture of what are the injury prevention or injury risk factors for the community of Akwesasne. And then another outcome of the project was 23 lesson plans that were presented to our students in grade 5 and 6 here in our Akwesasne Mohawk Board of Education schools. Next slide. So the idea of the project was to do, preparing of sessions, and we did community walks. Again, we're one community, but we cover, various jurisdictions, and we're kind of like 3 little communities within one community. So we had community walks, and we put the kids on a bus and took them to Gisnaine and to Ganondigo, which is where I am, and Gawanoge. And we had the kids use iPads and take pictures of what they thought were risky areas in each of those jurisdictions. And then we did narratives of what did they see, what did it mean, and then we did mapping. Next slide. So I think, so again, So some of the things that we did in terms of our storytelling sessions, we did introduction to injury prevention, mapping, vehicle and pedestrian safety, Halloween safety. We had a lot of fun with that. We did a video on that. We did the 3 E's. We did the community walks. We did snowmobile safety, ATV safety, poison control, fire safety, first aid, racism in sports. And these lessons plans were designed by Dr. Emily Vuelo, but they were done from an Akwesasne perspective. So all of these lessons were done with an Indigenous lens on these particular topics. And we also had, like, for first aid, we had the Mohawk Council, Akwesasne, emergency, the EMTs and the ambulance. They brought the ambulance. They brought a doll that the kids used to do different kinds of injury mechanisms on. And then we also had the fire department come, and they brought their fire trucks, and it was all kinds of, very exciting for our kids. They loved it. Next slide. So one of the unintended outcomes of this project, which blew our minds, because it was not something that was in the original proposal, it was not something that was even in the original conversations. We did have the Mohawk Council Communications Unit participate and provide video, and they did they did all of the lessons for the first year. But in the second year, I realized that I had a nephew that worked for the local Akwesasne TV, and I asked him, what would it cost to do PSAs on, these various topics? And when he told me the cost, I said, well, I need 7. And and we ended up doing 12. And so it was outstanding. We had Akwesasne TV. It was our videos were released on YouTube and on the Akwesasne TV website, and so some of the videos were very, very well received. Like the introduction, we got 2.99 thousand hits. Fire prevention, 1.5 thousand hits. Ice safety, no ice is safe ice, was the big message for that. And then the first aid was also very exciting. And then COVID hit. So we did a couple videos on COVID, and it was a little bit challenging, but it was very well received. As we got 1.7 thousand hits. And then our Voices wrap up was our messages to council and to the community, very well received. Next slide. So in terms of advancing Indigenous injury prevention, I think I have to say hats off to the BCIRPU, because around the time that I met Ian, as part of my role in the working group with HRCC, the funding dried up around 2006, and there was no longer any money that was being dedicated to Indigenous injury prevention. And so what AFN had to do basically was do injury prevention, surveillance, and research from the side of their desk. And they're just, from a national perspective, there was just no money or no way to do that. So, the BCIRPU came into the forefront, and again, we did the indicators report, and then we did this absolutely wonderful Voices project. So I think one of the things that was done that advanced particularly Indigenous injury prevention is that we found that the roles of Indigenous children and youth were not previously considered in injury prevention initiatives, and therefore they were overlooked. And this project empowered and showed that our children can be injury prevention promoters And then also that Indigenous children and youth are taught about injury prevention, and they were taught how to generate evidence, how to gather information, how to organize in a compelling way, and they were able to act as impactful agents of change. Again, we had those videos airing in the community, so the kids were all excited because they were seeing themselves on TV, but they were also giving a message, and then they would go home and share the injury prevention messages that they were hearing in school. So the next thing in terms of advancing Indigenous injury prevention is that Voices demonstrated that Indigenous children and youth can influence policy and practice and make changes in their environment. And also that Voices was created in collaboration and consultation with the community, and which led to its success. I think that was the most important thing, is that it was community led. I was the project coordinator here at the community level, and that's how I was able to get the partners and the fire department and the ambulance and Akwesasne TV and the council and everybody to support us. And I think the other lesson that we learned was that teams who plan to use the Voices method in other communities should ensure those strong partnerships, which were developed, and the principles of OCAP, which are respected. And I have to say, a huge thank you to the BCIRPU, because, especially to Ian, because we ended up not only just working together, but we became like family. I don't know if Shannon is there, but she was one of the ones that we were working with early in the project, and we were like family and friends, and I think that's very important in a partnership like this. And it's very difficult sometimes to get into First Nation communities to do work like this, and so I think it's a wonderful thing. And you'll see the Voices of Children and Youth Akwesasne project overview. It took us, I think, about a year to do the booklet, but it was just published last week, and it's a little like 25-page overview of the project, which we're very proud of, and we'll be sharing with the boards and with the council in the next few days. So thank you, Nyawakoa, for all of the wonderful work, and for keeping us on the radar. I do have to say, on the national level, there's very little being done by the national organizations, and it's just because there is no money. So, Ian, we still have a lot more work to do. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. McDonald. That was great. Our next presenter is Dr. Alison McPherson, who is a professor in the School of Kinesiology and Health Science at York University and an adjunct senior scientist at the Institute for Clinical Evaluative Sciences. Her research is related to keeping kids active, healthy, and safe, and focuses on the prevention of childhood injuries, primarily through policies and laws designed to reduce injuries. She's not here in person, unfortunately, but there's a video address.
Hi, everybody. First of all, happy 25th anniversary to the BC Injury Research and Prevention Unit. I'm Alison McPherson. I'm a professor in the School of Kinesiology and Health Science at York University, and I've been privileged to have been a collaborator with the BCIRPU for over 19 years. I had hoped to be there with you in person today, but unfortunately, I was unable to travel to British Columbia at this time, so I'm sending you a video instead, with my apologies. So first, I'd like to talk about how it started. I first met Ian at the Nottawasaga Resort in the fall of 2004. He had just started at BCIRPU, and I was a new tenure stream professor at York University. We chatted about research, injury prevention, and the challenges we were facing as we both were starting out on relatively new careers. Then there was a call for CIRJAR grants, team grants in child health indicators. Ian and I were both independently encouraged to apply for these grants as a principal investigator, but both of us felt that we were too junior in our careers to lead such a large team. We then proposed that we could co-lead the grant and do it together, and the rest, as they say, is history. When we started to apply for this grant, we set out with a very integrated KT approach, including partners from the then 4 injury prevention NGOs at the onset. We were successful in the competition, organized the team, and developed a robust set of child and youth injury indicators, many of which are used by various organizations to this day. Upon learning of our project and our approach, the then First Nations Inuit Health Branch reached out to us and asked us to run a parallel process with First Nations and Inuit communities, which we did also successfully. So going on, how it continued, the CIHR team in child and youth injury prevention ran from 2010 to 2016. And I think Ian would probably agree with me that this CIHR team was perhaps our greatest success. The idea started, as many do, with a picture on a cocktail napkin at a pub in Ottawa, and went from there. The team ended up including a stellar group of investigators from different disciplines from across the country. We had 10 core team leaders, 8 co-applicants, 10 knowledge users, 64 trainees, 4 executive committee members, and 6 international advisors. This was a really innovative approach at that time, and it has now been widely adopted and replicated in other large Canadian research teams. The team also had amazing results. There were over 143 publications associated with the team. There were over 60 trainees who were associated with the team, including 7 postdocs, 17 PhDs, 30 master's students, and more than 13 work study and summer students. We did over 160 interviews and press conferences, leveraged $8.6 million in other grant funds, and presented 185 presentations to national and international conferences. And a legacy of this grant is that we had built relationships with 24 key knowledge users from government and non-governmental organizations. So some of the outputs directly related to the CIHR team included a dashboard with injury counts, rates, deaths by mechanism, by age group that was widely used by stakeholders and the media for over 5 years. Many other initiatives research teams also arose from the team grant and used similar structures and approaches. It was the first grant to include the CAT, which I'm sure you're going to hear a lot more about today. But the CAT was such an innovative approach led by Dr. Shalina Babul, and it now has multiple versions and is used widely across Canada and internationally. There were many KT grants that arose out of this project, including one for injury prevention in First Nations communities. And I'm going to speak just a little bit about Ian and my engagement in partnerships with Indigenous communities. As a result of this body of work, we developed key partnerships with many Indigenous communities and organizations, including Inuit Tapiriit Kanatami, the Akwesasne Mohawk Territory, the First Nations Health Authority in British Columbia, and the Hupachasath First Nation. The Voices Project arose directly because of the established partnerships and showcased children perspectives on injury prevention and safety in the Akwesasne Mohawk Territory. Many important changes and initiatives that resulted from these partnerships. And if you haven't yet, I encourage you to look on YouTube and search Akwesasne Mohawk Voices and look at some of the videos that the Akwesasne Mohawk TV station produced that showcase what the children in Akwesasne thought about safety and injury prevention in their communities. So now I'd like to speak about what I think are the key impacts of the York BCIRPU collaboration. I really believe we changed the face of injury prevention research and practice in Canada through good governance, interdisciplinarity, and collaboration across sectors, which in the late 90s and early 2000s was really lacking in the Canadian injury prevention community. We adopted a truly integrated KT approach with key partners included from the outset of grant writing, developing the research question, through to the dissemination of results. Many trainees who've been involved in the various grants are now part of the injury prevention community in academia and beyond, and in Canada and around the world. And other projects arose across Canada that included both BCIRPU and YorkU as key partners, and we've been very pleased to be part of many of those initiatives. So in conclusion, I wanted to say thank you. Thank you for inviting me to speak today. Thank you to Ian and your team. It's really been an honor to be part of BCIRPU's journey for me, and I look forward to many more years of collaboration and success in research and injury prevention in Canada. Thank you, and once again, I'm sorry I'm not there with you in person.
Thank you. Our next speaker, which will be on the Zoom live, is Ms. Pamela Fuselli. Pamela is the president and the CEO at Parachute and one of the 4 co-founders who successfully led a process of national consultation and visioning, resulting in the formation of Parachute, Canada's national charity dedicated to injury prevention. Pamela leads Parachute's mission to turn evidence of what works into action, building strong relationships with stakeholders across Canada to achieve this mission. Over to you, Pamela.
Thanks, Mara. Thanks so much for the introduction. I'm sorry I can't be there in person. I would really like to be in the room. It was so lovely to hear the morning's presentations and the remarks so far that I think really truly communicate what BCIRPU has contributed to BC, but also across Canada and globally. So I first became involved with BCIRP when I joined Safe Kids Canada. And that was back in 1999. And we've had some great blasts from the past in terms of reports. But I think that was really the 90s, mid to late 90s was really when a lot of organizations in injury prevention started. And this collaborative relationship has continued to the present. I think that's one of the themes that I've been hearing through the remarks, and certainly something that I wanted to draw attention to was that recipe for success, that combination of positive long-term relationship building that has created a family and really the foundations of trust that has allowed a lot of the successes that BCIRPU and by extension, those of us who work alongside them have achieved. So BCIRPU is our lead provincial agency and of course a leader across Canada, but also globally. We've had a number of collaborations and certainly the whole team at BCIRPU we've worked with extensively, but I thought I'd draw attention to a couple. One, of course, being Dr. Ian Pike and his role on our Parachutes Expert Advisory Committee, also as a current director on our board. There's many more collaborations that Ian and I and Parachute enjoy, including doing on the cost of injury and Allison just mentioned a lot of the research projects that are underway and being a collaborative partner on those projects. Working with Shalina, Dr. Shalina Babul, of course, one of the experts in Canada on concussion, and she has been on our expert advisory committee from 2016 all the way to the present. And as we go into revising concussion information based on the latest international statement, we will continue that relationship. Dr. Mariana Bressoni is also someone that Parachute and I personally have worked alongside very closely. Mariana and I have worked together since she was chair at Safe Kids Canada of our expert advisory committee. And as she so generously pointed out in her presentation, has helped us out with Parachute's Popping the Bubble Wrap podcast. And in fact, the entire concept of risky play and not bubble wrapping our kids has stemmed from the conversations that both Mariana and Ian have contributed to and led in Canada, and led us to actually name our podcast after that concept of popping bubble wrap. We've heard a lot about BCIRPU's contributions over the years in research and knowledge translation. The data collection and analysis in particular is so important. The contributions to social marketing and communications. Dr. Peck talked this morning about the 3 E's, and the idea of raising awareness and educating about injury prevention is one of the key approaches, effective approaches. We know it's not the most effective, but it certainly is an essential ingredient in the work that we do in injury prevention. I think the student piece, and Allison mentioned this too, has been a priority for BCIRPU and a number of our other partners across the country. But in particular, the big CIHR grant that Allison mentioned that her and Ian were successful in getting has really sparked that priority around students and engaging students in projects that help us build the field of injury prevention in Canada. We've managed to attract some excellent researchers and students who have gone on to lead themselves in the injury prevention field, and that is largely due to Ian, Shalina, Allison, Mariana's, all their leadership in attracting students and really supporting them through that process. The technology, Ian is one of the people that I go to very quickly around technology, especially around the data and analytics. And I've noted here the IDOT and Tableau. We recently moved to a Tableau presentation of the cost of injury report in the last report that was released. And instead of printing out a document, although now that we were looking back at previous publications, maybe it is good to have a hard copy or at least an electronic visual of those types of reports, because we really need to look back and celebrate how far we've come. Sometimes it doesn't feel like we've come all that far, but we really have come a long way since the 1990s. The unit continues to provide leadership and creating and contributing to key initiatives. Definitely leadership in British Columbia, but also across Canada and globally. They are taking their experience and expertise that is so valuable to the province of British Columbia and extending that across the country and globally, and then bringing that back to BC. So some of the contributions I thought I would highlight is the long work that we did, a big group of us, but BCIRPU was one of the provincial representatives on the federal public health network injury prevention strategy. Their contributions to the Canadian injury prevention curriculum is immeasurable, as well as Ian being one of the Canadian injury prevention resources, or as we affectionately call it now, the textbook that goes with the curriculum. The creation of that was the first in Canada. Being a provincial lead agency for the collaborating centers for injury prevention, this is a center, a collection of provincial agencies and national organizations that was created on that napkin that Allison mentioned, with some of the best ideas are on the back of a napkin, but in the middle of the 1990s, this was created and BC was one of the founding members of that. I would be remiss if I didn't draw attention to the concussion awareness training tool, the CAT, as we affectionately know it, and working with, again, on the technology and leading edge of presenting information and training that is available in Canada. The CAT is one of the best examples of that. And so collaborating on the medical professionals module was a real pleasure for the team at Parachute. I've mentioned the cost of injury, and we would not be where we are without Farah's expertise, skills. Unfortunately, being not located in the province, I have not been able to enjoy her cooking, but I heard lots about her expertise in that area. She has equal, if not more, expertise in data and analysis, and working closely with Farah and with Ian on the cost of injury report in Canada. They have worked on provincial level and regional reports, and we are currently working with them, as well as a large group of across the country, on narrowing the cost of injury to look at poisoning in Canada, but also to look at the return on investment. So to try to measure some of the impacts that prevention strategies like poison centers have on our healthcare system. Preventable and being involved with this, in my mind, the only social marketing campaign and initiative in Canada that has measurable outcomes. And I was pleased to be involved, or at least watch from the inception of this all the way through to the over decade of this being in action, and really pleased to hear about some of the new work being done in the fire prevention area and thinking about how that could apply in other provinces. The Canadian Child Safety Report Card, the indicators, the Child and Youth Serious Indicators, Injury Indicators, and the Canadian Child Safety Report Card. These are all foundational documents that help the field grow as a field and as professionals in the field. Having those solid foundational documents and knowing the scope of injuries, who is getting hurt, how, why, and what is effective is really, really important. More recently, we worked with some of the BCIRPU staff, Andy, on the evidence summary of prevention of poisoning, in Canada. And on the programming side, BCIRPU is one of the sites that delivers the Brainwaves program, and in fact contributed to resources of a series of videos that is now being used by other Brainwave sites across the country. And last, I think that one of the major achievements, at least in the last couple of years, is because of collaboration with BCIRP, we were able to hold the first Canadian Injury Prevention Conference that has been held in 10 years. And so the contributions of the BCIRP team to this event, how positive it was received, and the excitement that was generated from it. Vanessa, Anita, Kate, Shazia, all of the team at BCIRPU contributed to the success of this injury prevention conference, and has sparked a plan to now hold these regularly every 2 years. So we're in discussion for the next one, but it really was reignited by the ability for us to partner with BCIRPU and present this conference last November. So just to wrap up, I want to say congratulations, a sincere congratulations to the team now and in the past, the contributing members, on 25 awesome years. Your collaboration, your support of me personally, of Parachute and the team at Parachute, and your openness for collaboration is truly welcomed. Is we are grateful for it, and we can't wait to see what you do in the next 25 years. Thanks.
Thank you, Pam. I would like to welcome our next speaker, Fire Chief Len Garris, and he'll be speaking on the various fire-related projects the unit has worked on in collaboration with the City of Surrey. Len Garris is the retired fire chief for the City of Surrey and is also an adjunct professor at the University of the Fraser Valley, a member of the affiliated research faculty at John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York, and an associate scientist emeritus at the BCIRPU. Len is currently working with Statistics Canada as a senior advisor for the Canadian Centre for Justice and Community Safety Statistics, and the director of research for the National Indigenous Fire Safety Council. He is full of energy and an enthusiastic advocate for data-driven decision-making, as evidenced by him taking on his role as Statistics Canada after retiring from a distinguished career as the fire chief for the Surrey Fire Department. Please welcome Chief Garris.
Thank you very much, Alex. And Ian, thanks for the invitation. I came with a little bit more of an maybe organic talk about my relationship with the unit and how I ended up standing here today. My resume, as you saw it there, is probably by the influence that Ian had provided back quite a number of years ago, and I'm going to explain that. So firstly, I wanted to commence by saying congratulations on 25 years of service to the citizens of Canada and the province of British Columbia. You've done a great job. So I want to start with my affiliation and how I got here. So it was about a decade, maybe a little bit longer ago. I got a phone call from an individual from the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons. And it was through my executive assistant who arrived in my office and said, this fellow is going to be in Vancouver next week, and he would like to meet with you. And it's a breakfast meeting. It's going to be at 5:30 in the morning. And he's the president of the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons. So what did I know about that? Nothing. So, but I was very intimidated by the call. And so at that point, I took reinforcements. I took my deputy chief, and I took Dr. Joseph Clare, who I'd hired as a strategic analyst, and he accompanied me. And very quickly, sitting down in the dark of the morning at 5:30, having breakfast with Dr. Francis Cuddy, he explained to me that he was starting a movement in Canada, and he wanted to reduce deaths by 4,000 in the coming year and a bit. And he said, I'd heard about you and about your smoke alarm campaign. And he said, I want you to contribute to those 4,000 people. So it was pretty difficult at that time to say no. Lewis, as anybody in this room knows him, is very persuasive. And he was a very strong leader and very sincere in his objective. And I was really intrigued with that because at that time I was a fire chief in the city of Surrey and newly put into this position, and looking at my fire and death rates going up in the city and trying to figure out whether I was responsible for that or whether I could bring that down. And looking at all the rates around me, they all seem to be going up with society and population. And we were just assuming that's what was driving the rates. And what I learned from this group of individuals is that's not the case, that you can actually focus on these things. So at that time, I realized that I was being invited to a group of fire prevention, injury reduction specialists, and they were the superheroes in Canada, I learned. And leading that group, and part of that group was Dr. Ian Pike, of course, Joanne Banfield, Leslie Dunning, John Evans, Pamela, as you just saw, Helen Haig, Paul Kells, Dr. Barry Pless, Derek Sanalek, Jerry Shimko, and others, all had a mission to reduce deaths and injuries in British Columbia and Canada. And I became really intrigued with that. As a matter of fact, the relationship became a gift because it's not a commonplace, as I described, in Canadian fire services to reduce deaths and injuries. We have programs, we do those types of things, but we are really focused on red trucks and getting there fast. That's what we like to do, right? And what I learned is that there's actually some other way of approaching this particular problem. And I learned that from Ian and his group. And it's kind of boded me well, and how well you might ask. So just recently we published a paper, and it was a longitudinal study of looking at population and disparate fire events in the city of Surrey. And we did this program where we mixed social characteristics, vulnerabilities, and fire rates, and we brought them together in a bivariate index, and we started focusing on those people and places, and we started visiting those people and places and started delivering targeted prevention programs. So what happened? So we had an 80% decrease in 12 years of fire rates in the city of Surrey. We saw a 50% decrease in the number of casualties associated with fires in the city. And when fires did occur, 95% of them were smaller than they were before. So in other words, people were interacting with their events much quicker. So over the past decade, these fire prevention strategies that I've been involved in with the unit here have been quite numerous. As a matter of fact, we've gone along this, it's not a straight path, it's a very crooked path of trails. And I'm going to talk about some of the things that we did. You heard earlier from Fire Commissioner Brian Godlington about the program that's occurring in British Columbia that the unit is involved in. It's a $1.6 million investment in the safety of British Columbians. And I can tell you that that's going to work. As a matter of fact, I think it's going to work much better than what I was involved in 12 years ago when we saw death and injuries drop in British Columbia on a casual smoke alarm campaign. This targeted campaign is going to make British Columbia the safest place on earth. I'm convinced of that. So as I just noted, we did a longitudinal study on City of Surrey, and we've got some fabulous results. So as maybe some of you know or not know, because I've been in the business for quite a number of years, but if you're a firefighter in anywhere on earth, you can expect that your relationship with cancer is going to be 9% higher than the rest of the population. And if you contact cancer, your death rate is going to be 14% higher. So trying to understand this, these characteristics and the situation, we noticed that the female firefighter population in the evidence was very dismal. And so we needed to correct that. So we did a study. We did an international study on firefighters, female firefighters and cancers, and we discovered some very strong characteristics that need to influence a policy around female firefighters. And we hope to be able to influence survival rates, but also rates for pre-screening as well. So one would ask, well, why would we do a study on wood and concrete, right? And what burns faster? Well, of course, the natural thing to say is wood is going to burn and concrete's not. But why that's important is because we're trying to sequester carbon in the rest of the world, and we're trying to use more wood than concrete because it uses less carbon. But we're also interested in making sure that that environment's safe. So what did we do? We looked at hundreds of thousands of incidents that took place in Canada, and we looked at what the buildings were made of, and we determined that, you know, given the safety systems associated with what this new environment is, that really wood or concrete never came into play. It's an important characteristic in order to understand that the safety systems that have been built into it are actually doing a difference. We also focused on female firefighters and injuries and how can we influence those policies. Is there a difference? Turnout clear gear is made for men, not for women. And there's some various different characteristics. And so we want to be able to influence those things. Non-medical overdose is associated with pharmacy. Why is that important to the fire service? Well, that represents probably about 40% of the call volume in the Lower Mainland is opiate overdoses, and trying to figure out what's affecting that. So this is important work that's been supporting the fire services. The influence of electrical fires associated to secondary suites. We need housing. We've all heard that. And so secondary suites is an affordable housing, but we're worried about whether they're safe or not and whether they've been built with permits. So we looked at retrospectively, is that actually influencing those things? Anti-idling technology for fire trucks. You know, we need to remove our carbon footprint as well. So there's other ways of doing that. So we're looking at the benefits of that. Examining the relationship between firefighters, injuries, and fatalities. So I talked a little bit about cancer, and I'm going to say this may be a little bit on the shameless side, but the work that the unit did, along with ourselves, on a report on firefighter injuries and cancer, actually was read in the House of Commons on Bill C-244, which is going to create a national framework for research around firefighters and cancer. And we influenced that. That was read in the House of Commons. And I couldn't have been more proud of the group for the work that was done. So occupational exposure opposed to asbestos, and those are other aspects that we were concerned about. So aside from that, as you noted, I'm the Director of Research, among other things, for the National Indigenous Fire Safety Council. Ian and his team have done numerous reports to support that group and to try and bring policies in that can focus on our Indigenous populations. So I'm thinking I'm just about out of time here. And I'm glad that you put that sign up because I timed this almost perfectly. So I wanted to bring my talk to the beginning and really congratulate you on 25 years. You guys it's going to be some generational changes because I know how old I am, and I'm not going to forecast how old the rest of you are, but I know how long the relationship has been. And I know that eventually we're going to be moving on. And I just wanted to congratulate you on what you've done, what you've contributed, and what's left to go. There's an awful lot of work to do going in the future. And the evidence and the things that you've brought to the fire service and fire prevention have been phenomenal. And you're influencing, as I can say, the rest of Canada in terms of some of the things that we're doing and why we're doing them and making it safer. So congratulations, keep up the great work. I hope to be around for a little bit longer in this role, but please keep up the good work. Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is Mr. Kevin Lafernay. Kevin is currently WorkSafe BC's Head of Stakeholder Engagement, Communications and Marketing. In this capacity, Kevin is responsible for customer feedback and improvement processes, corporate communication, both internal and external, and the marketing brand strategy for WorkSafe BC. Kevin also continues as the Executive Director of the Community Against Preventable Injuries, also known as Preventable. And it's a video address.
Hey, Amy, what's up?
It's time for you to record your message for the BCIRPU event thingy.
BCIRPU? Isn't that a new COVID variant? What is that?
No, it's the 25-year celebration for Ian Pike and his team at the unit.
Oh, the unit, of course. Yes, okay, hold it. Okay, hold it. Wow, geez. Thanks, Amy. Hello, everyone. For those of you who I haven't met or worked with, my name is Kevin Lafreniere, and I am the co-executive director of the Community Against Preventable Injuries, also known as Preventable. Unfortunately, I'm unable to attend this event in person today, but I'm thrilled to be able to join you virtually through this video and celebrate the unit's 25th anniversary. My relationship with the unit started over 16 years ago, back in 2007. At that time, I was tasked with creating this new province-wide initiative that would look at serious preventable injuries from a social marketing lens and try to address the huge human and economic impact that these injuries were having in the province of BC. although I came to this work with a business development, marketing, brand strategy background, I was completely over my head when it came to the overall issue of preventable injuries in the province of British Columbia. So I've got a quick story about the first time, I met Ian when I started this work. I remember presenting at a injury prevention conference when I first started. And at that time, this initiative was somewhat fuzzy and nebulous, and we really hadn't fleshed it out all that much. But I knew that in order to be successful, I needed to engage the injury prevention community and get their support and partnership. So I was at this conference, and I was able to see a presentation that Ian gave, and I was incredibly impressed. So during a coffee break, I went up to Ian, introduced myself, and we had a really good conversation. And at that time, I was, giving my sales pitch and kind of explaining to him what I was trying to do and what this initiative was all about. And talking to him about wanting to change societal attitudes and getting British Columbians to think and act differently when it came to serious preventable injuries. Ian nodded his head, looked at me and said, "Well, good luck with that." And we parted ways. So I thought to myself, okay, that went better than I thought it was going to go. But I knew right then that Ian and the unit were partners that I needed to engage in a very meaningful way to make this successful. So during the first few years of this initiative, Ian and I worked very, very closely together. And I really felt that our differing backgrounds and experiences complemented one another. Whether it was touring the province, doing focus groups with British Columbians and talking to British Columbians about this issue and really getting to understand what their motivators or obstacles were to changing behavior, or whether it was traveling across the country or internationally for that matter, and presenting to potential partners. Ian and I logged a lot of kilometers in those first few years. And by the way, there is no better way to get to know somebody than when your flight is delayed and you're stuck in an airport lounge with an open bar. That is a cool way to get to know somebody and to meet some really interesting people. So over the course of the last 16 plus years, Preventable and the unit have accomplished some really amazing things. So whether it's establishing a province-wide P3, not-for-profit, focused specifically on raising awareness and changing attitudes and behaviors towards preventable injuries, whether it was launching, which I believe was a truly innovative approach to this issue in the province back in 2009, and launching annual consecutive campaigns since 2009, and bringing Preventable to Alberta and launching Preventable with that partnership, as well as in Ontario and the Maritimes through our work with Parachute. And I'm proud to say that I believe we've influenced similar approaches both in the United States and most notably in New Zealand. I mean, at the end of the day, the work that we have done together and continue to do together is showing some real results. When asked, British Columbians, over 80% of British Columbians either agree or strongly agree that Preventable is making a difference in the province, and it is speaking to them in a very meaningful way. We have seen a 15+% increase in awareness, attitudes, and self-reported behavioral change when it comes to preventable injuries. We've actually seen a 10% reduction in injury-related deaths amongst 25 to 55-year-old cohort that is part of our target audience. And more significant reduction of up to about 30% in injury-related deaths amongst 0 to 24-year-old British Columbians. Huge, huge impacts. I can safely say that these results would not have been possible without the hard work and support of the unit and its incredible team. I count myself really lucky to have gotten to know and worked very closely with such a passionate and talented group of people. And whether it's, Sam, Johnston, Shalina, Mariana, Megan, Anita, Farah, and Kate, I know I probably missed a few people. What an incredible team. Thank you so much for all of your continued support and hard work. In closing, I want to congratulate the unit on its 25 years of amazing work. Your organization is truly making a difference in the lives of British Columbians. To coin one of my favorite Preventable campaign taglines, before you think you can achieve great things without the BCIRPU, have a word with yourself. Thanks, everyone, and enjoy the celebration.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ian Pike. I'm professor of pediatrics here at the University of British Columbia, and it's been my absolute privilege to be the director of the BC Injury Research and Prevention Unit for 20 years now, and to have worked with each and every one of the speakers who have presented this morning. And like Sean, I'm getting a bit lumpy here. So we're going to close this morning's sessions, but before we do, we have closing messages from the Department of Pediatrics, the chair, and from the Senior Executive Director of the BC Children's Hospital Research Institute, Dr. Quinn Doan. So I'm going to start by introducing Dr. Doan, who's going to provide her closing message. Dr. Doan, as I said, is the Senior Executive Director for the BC Children's Hospital Research Institute, Director of Clinical Research, an Institute investigator, and a pediatric emergency room physician. As a member of Pediatric Emergency Research Canada, Dr. Doan is the BC Children's Site Investigator for many of the PERC multi-center studies and the PERC representative at the Research Institute. Dr. Doan is also an associate professor in pediatric emergency medicine at the University of British Columbia, and it's been my honor and privilege to work with Dr. Doan over many years, and now as a member of her Research Leadership Council. So Dr. Doan, if I could invite you to come and say a few words, I would be very pleased.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the kind introduction, Ian. It's been a pleasure to be working with you personally, but with also the BCIRPU. I still remember the day when they were looking for a home for the researchers in the program. And I was so happy that we were able to identify the emergency medicine division as the home to your investigators, and it's been a great collaboration ever since. Acknowledging the pain and the suffering that's surrounding us at home and abroad as of late, I am so grateful for this cause for celebration. We live in an era where knowledge is both created and transmitted in an exponential way. I just saw a video that was telling us about how knowledge has been moving in the last few years and how it's continuing to move, and how we are training our kids today into professions that don't exist yet, to solve problems that we don't know about yet. And this pace of knowledge that we're exposed to, some of it contributes to our risky behaviors. Some of it contributes to our stress. But thankfully, much of it has improved our way of living. And as presented through the morning today, you can see that over the past 25 years, the BCIRPU has saved countless lives and prevented much suffering because the knowledge it created was impactful through guiding policy, informing clinical practice, directed the knowledge that we directed the education that we're providing our kids, and in that way supporting behavior changes at the household level. Very few things can have such reach. And when we asked about, when I'm being asked about the Research Institute's strength, my answer has been consistent and immediate. Our strength is our people. And the people that form the BCIRPU are some of the best. They are exemplary academics who are resourceful and generous in both their education and their sharing of their expertise. As you can see, the collaborations that they have accumulated over the past 25 years are commendable. And as we embark on a new strategic planning process at the BC Children's Research Institute, in our pursuit of embodying a true learning healthcare system, I know and trust that the BCIRPU will model how we engage in creation of knowledge that is equitable, and benefit children and youth and family in an inclusive manner. So I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to celebrate 25 years of shared learning with you today.
Thanks. And I think there's a photograph that we want. If you don't mind. Thank you. Thank you again, Quinn, for those very kind words. Sorry. We now hear a video address from Dr. Stephen Miller. Stephen is the department chair of the Department of Pediatrics. Dr. Miller is a professor of medicine, head of the UBC Department of Pediatrics, and chief of pediatric medicine here at BC Children's Hospital. His research focuses on better understanding of brain development and injury in newborns. His multidisciplinary team uses advanced brain imaging and detailed long-term follow-up to help children who are born early or with other conditions that put them at risk of neurological and developmental deficits. His team's work has contributed to our understanding of brain abnormalities caused directly by preterm birth, perinatal asphyxia, or indirectly by congenital heart disease. Most recently, in recognition of his contributions as a clinician, researcher, innovator, and mentor, Dr. Miller is the 2023 recipient of the James H. Graham Award of Merit. The award is given annually to a person whose outstanding career achievements reflect the aims and objectives of the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons of Canada. And it's our pleasure to congratulate Stephen on that very prestigious award and listen to his video address.
Congratulations to you, the BC Research Injury and Prevention Unit, on your 25th anniversary. What a remarkable portfolio of achievement over this time around injury prevention, whether it's concussions, sports injuries, even firefighter injuries. You have done such a remarkable job bringing research evidence to practice, either at the point of care or through policy. When I think of the number 25, I'm reminded that almost 25% of our population today in British Columbia are children and youth. And they are 100% of our future. They are also our present. The work you are doing to prevent injuries is making that present even better today. As someone who spends my professional time at BC Children's Hospital and focused on the in-hospital care of children, I want to acknowledge just how important your work is in preventing children from coming to the hospital, and how that work is having such an important impact, not only on the present of our children and making child health better, but the opportunities through your research, knowledge mobilization, and policy activities in making our future and our children's future even brighter. Congratulations again.
Well, again, thank you to Dr. Doan and Dr. Miller. As we close the session this morning, I'd like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to all of our speakers for their stories, but more importantly, their collective wisdom, and most importantly, their contributions and support provided to the BC Injury Research and Prevention Unit over this past 25 years. We could not have achieved many of the things we've been lauded as achieving without their expertise, their support, their input, and their ongoing collaborations. Thank you all so very much. So we're going to adjourn for lunch now. We'll reconvene. I'm looking at my boss, Anita, what time shall we reconvene? We're running a little late. Quarter to 2? Could people reconvene in 55 minutes, quarter to 2? And we will then take up the afternoon session. This session, I think, will be extremely interesting as we focus on a very key initiative that you heard about earlier on today, which is the Vision Zero Road Safety Grant Program and some of the very early impacts that are being achieved by that program following its first 2 years of granting. So could I please ask everybody then to join us for lunch outside? But before we do, those people who spoke this morning, we would really like you to gather so we could have a group photograph of everybody together. So enjoy lunch and we will reconvene at 1:45. Thank you.
Oh, no. Oh, no.